Well, I don't know what that was all about. For whatever reason, Restream was screwing up. Got to try to vainly try to prevent myself from using profanity in the first 5 minutes. The off chance that maybe the stream won't get demonetized. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. There is a new, if you guys see in the chat, there is for members, there is a new HH emote. If you're a channel member, $5, $5 a month, you can be a member of the King Pilled, which means you too can use the HH emote. You have to type Hulk for it. It wouldn't allow me to do HH because the little phrase has to be, or the little term has to be at least 3 characters. So I was deciding between Hulk and HHH. So I went with just went with Hulk. I see the Trumps in the emoji. Or sorry, I see the Trumps in the chat. The Trumps emojis in the chat. And I've been hold on. Got to get the Alps situated here. There we go. I've been seeing the eggplants in the comments. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for playing along with our little algorithm gaming game. we post eggplants out of our show of appreciation, respect, compassion, sympathy for all of those who are carrying the burden of Trump-related ultramassive penis syndrome, aka Trumps. We post our Trumps in the chat as our way of throwing out a digital Roman, throwing out the digital Roman to all of our Trumps enjoyers. It is a late lab. It has been a day. I was thinking it was going to be so perfect if the stream didn't even work after all of this. I was struggling for a while to find something to talk about today. I had a couple of little kind of short, simple stories, but it was one of those days where I've had a bunch of other stuff on my mind, so I didn't have something that I was like sitting there thinking about, ready to start discussing. So I needed something to kind of kickstart it. And I was just grasping for things to talk about. And then I stumbled upon a couple of things. I thought of a couple of things, and that sent me down a rabbit hole because I was like, oh, this is something I definitely want to talk about, but I need to make sure that I need to get all the supporting information here. So I was doing a research binge, and then setting everything up and getting all the story sequence and everything just took me longer and longer and longer, and eventually I was like, all right, I'm just going to do it whenever I do it. So 8:30 it is. At least I'm going to get it out there for you guys, and you'll have all weekend to go through it. So the primary stories, I mentioned a couple 3 or 4 days ago, this FHA mortgage bubble story. Biden's FHA has created a massive bubble that is just waiting to pop, and it's basically what is holding, what has kept the housing market from complete collapse. Of course, anytime you have these sorts of measures that are designed to prevent complete and total collapse, the longer you forestall that complete and total collapse, the worse the collapse gets. So we got a situation on our hands with this. And then a couple little odds and ends stories. And then a researcher at the Bank of America has said that Doge's work to detox government is critical, but will be brutally painful, which is a very interesting thing coming from the least American bank. Actually, we actually have even non-American banks that claim to be American who are coming out in support of the Doge effort. I wonder what's behind that. What's motivating that? And then I've got a thread here about gold. What else do we have? Morgan Stanley is making a massive call on Tesla, which is itself very interesting. There's lots of weird little things that are happening behind the scenes among some of the major institutions. We're trying to kind of tie those together, see what we can draw, what sort of dots we can connect. We're like Charlie from It's Always Sunny out here. And then I'm going to introduce you guys to the SOFTWAR thesis. This is a building off of... Oh, hold on just a sec. I think something bad might have happened here, and I might need to make sure I have one of my links. No, it worked. Okay, great. Good to know. All right. This is building off the conversation yesterday with the dreaded B word, the Bitcoin. Building off of that, Jason Lowry's SOFTWAR thesis. This is not software, soft war. like software without the E. This, to me, I think is one of the most compelling things about Bitcoin. It as an investment is interesting. It as a currency is interesting. These are like downstream effects of the actual, I think, potential legitimate, not legitimate. It's not that the other ones aren't legitimate. It's just this I think this particular insight about the traits of Bitcoin is perhaps the most fundamental. And it's so fundamental that having like a revolutionary currency or a revolutionary investment vehicle is actually like, I think those cases are legitimate, but I think that those pale in comparison to the larger story. So this is of particular importance to me now. I first stumbled across Jason Lowry. Maybe, let's see, I think it was after I got to Texas, so it would have had to be early 2022. And I came across him because one of our, you see random username in here occasionally. He dropped a couple things in the King Pill Discord, and I started watching Jason Lowry's interview series with Robert Breedlove, where he's elaborating on his thesis of power projection and Bitcoin as a military technology, as a tool for power projection. That has become even more interesting to me now that I got really into that, really deep into it for a little while, and then my mind, I've wandered around some other places and did my dalliance through the world of Silicon Valley, and had the whole PayPal mafia thing, and everyone talked about that for a while, and then they came out and it was validated, and so it's been changing the way that I view the state of play. And then spending the last that whole thing led ultimately to me discovering Stormy Waters and Tom Luongo, and beginning to they sort of opened an entirely new world of understanding the lay of the land. And so kind of coming around full circle now, I'm like, hold on a second. We had this Space Force guy who was, I think he's Space Force, maybe he was just Air Force. Military, has all the hallmarks of military intelligence. That sort of world. Like, this is the way these sorts of things develop and percolate. And the Bitcoin as an evolution of the internet kind of theories, like leaving aside the currency aspect, like looking at Bitcoin as like a layer on the internet, has always been very compelling to me. And now thinking of it in military technology terms, I'm starting to really buy into Luke Gromen's thesis, who, interestingly, Jason Lowry's book shouts out Luke Gromen, among many other people. I'm beginning to suspect that this whole Bitcoin thing is part of it's been like sort of discovering that there's a branch of American political influence peddlers or managers who are affiliated broadly with the banking and military world, who are very clearly not on board for the global CBDC, World Economic Forum, Davos worldview. It's very, very obvious that this is not something they want to sign up for, because they've got direct personal interests against that. It turns out that the United States, that North America, as an asset, is incredibly valuable. And there are lots of people who are competing to control that value. So a globalist organization that wants to lay claim to all of that value and direct it toward their own purposes is inevitably going to run into the people who want to maintain their claim of that asset and not have it distorted to other purposes. I think for a long time it's felt like, the only people who care about the sovereignty of America are hapless internet posters and poor hoi polloi. But what's become very clear with the rise of Trump, and then Trump's ability to navigate to this point, the fact that he's still alive, the fact that he's actually president, the fact that he's actually undertaking the agenda that he's undertaking is overwhelming evidence that this cabal faction of political force exists. It's not as simple as there's a uniparty, and that uniparty has deep-seated opposition. The uniparty is serving at the behest of overseas powers and influences, and there is a domestic consortium of interests that want nothing to do with a world in which all of American capital is subordinated to the whims of European bureaucrats and the bankers that they stand in for. So what are those guys? What are these guys? What this new faction is? They're very difficult to kind of draw lines around. You can point to certain people, but by definition, this is a game of intrigue. We're seeing I think it's reasonable to call it a military coup, effectively, but it's being done in a whatever you are, fourth, fifth generation warfare sort of way. So they're using the existing system, but thinking strategically and applying thumbs to weights where necessary, and building a coalition of people who are increasingly being disenfranchised from the uniparty, the blob. But drawing a hard line here is between these factions is impossible. It's preposterous to even think about it. Because by its nature, this is like an emergent process that's happening. There are people who, as time goes on, maybe they're aligned on one side, but the incentives change, and so they pivot and they move and they align on the other side. This is a tale as old as time. So we're watching this play out in real time, and so this is why it's legitimate to view the world in the terms of of people who are going through this conversion process of sorts, where they start off like J.D. Vance would be a great example of this. Once upon a time, he was very clearly aligning himself with the uniparty, expressing the values of the uniparty. And in the last decade, he's very clearly completely switched sides altogether, to where he's now one of the most public and effective communicators of the values of the faction that stands against the uniparty. So these are stories that exist all throughout time. We've only known them as like matters of history, but now we're living through history. And so I think once you like put these once you start viewing the world through these lenses, like you put this pair of glasses on and kind of view the world this way, everything starts making a whole lot of sense. And you could start tracing this story back. Okay, so how long has this what influences, what financial influences, what political influences are influencing the people who are influencing now? You start kind of trying to trace those threads, and you can spend the rest of your life doing this. But it seems increasingly abundantly obvious that everything, if you've been following the show for I don't know, 6 to 12 months, and I kind of have this network of influences that I'm drawing on, and I'm trying to take a story from this person and a story from this person and a story from this person, see where they overlap, where they connect, and I'm trying to take in the different worldviews these people are presenting and stitch it into a narrative that I think makes sense, considering all the various factors at play. And it's become, I think, very obvious to me that this Bitcoin play that's happening now with the administration is a military technology. This is a I don't even know how to say this, like a strategic military move that's happening. The process of the structural incorporation of Bitcoin. It's being undertaken as a military intelligence operation. And to whatever extent, you had the CIA. Like the CIA was like the hub of where all the spycraft was happening. And then the CIA, and then like the nature of spycraft is that sometimes you need to have people who are plausibly deniable, and like who's an agent? Like how do you qualify someone as an agent? Is it someone who's cooperating and feeding you information? Is it somebody that's going and doing little tasks for you here and there, but they're not officially on the payroll? Like that gets really murky. And over a matter of decades, this is sprawled out to where you have like the formal CIA, but then you have this entire network of different institutions that serve as intelligence fronts. There's companies, there's media organizations, there's universities, there's hospitals, research centers. Virtually every institution of any sort of scale has some sort of element or influence of this there. They turned it into an entire career. Where now, like, you can go to college and you can basically learn a like sanitized corpo speak version of that worldview and those methodologies. The entire world has been built now on this sort of framework. It's where you have the whole NGO complex and all of the experts culture around that. And all of our universities, they all flow through that. So everyone who's being pumped out is being naturally wired to effectively serve as an asset of the interests of that system, consciously or subconsciously. And you could get like 4 quadrants there, where you have the people who are consciously, willfully, and then the unconsciously, willfully, and then unconsciously, unwillfully. Yeah. Anyways, so you have these. Most professional people have been trained with like McKinsey speak. You have like McKinsey consultants. You have consultancies. Where do all these people train? Where are they all being cultivated? They're all listening to the same speeches, the same educators, the same institutions, all the political narratives that are being driven by the same organizations. So this is the blob. They're all functioning as agents, but there's like a continuum where the closer you are to the core, the more conscious and willful you are, and the further you are from it, the more simply possessed you are. But that methodology, once you have people who become aware of it, they start recognizing the reality of the lay of the land. Maybe they have some sort of native interest in, maybe they're a patriotic American. Maybe they just don't like Europeans. Maybe they have massive real estate interests in the United States. Maybe they just have an affection for, they're not like some hardcore red-blooded patriotic American, but they have an affection for America and the ideals and yada, yada, yada. And they don't want to see that subverted for this reason or that reason. All those people who have that interest, who have an affection for America and want America to maintain the values that it's held as distinct from Europeans, who want to see America be in control of its own destiny, all of those people are being, there's like a gravity well that's pulling them all together. But there's a hub of interests at the center of that has been engineering, working and operating behind the scenes, themselves using a lot of the same intelligence methodologies, who have been working to bring about this outcome. You can see this in, like, the more the plan rolls out, the more clear it is that this is something that's being intentionally constructed. Even if the people who are participating in that wouldn't tell the same story about it that we would, they're still playing that part, and they're driving that mission forward. So I think a lot of the people I'm talking to here and the people I do talk to, we've come through the libertarian worldview, where we're wired to look at any government agency or military affiliated thing or military contract or anything like that. We're wired to presume that these are by nature, they are representations of or fictional constructs of the state, which we equate with the uniparty, which we equate with every bad thing in the world. This is like the libertarian, the sort of overly simplified libertarian worldview. Sometimes it's not overly simplified. Sometimes it's that simple. But once you're the idea that every single state organization has all the same incentives doesn't really pass muster once you start thinking about it. Like the idea that every single state, because it's a state, naturally wants to be subsumed into the grand globalist state of all states, that actually is counterintuitive. You wouldn't really think that. This is part of the problem with the libertarian conception of the state, the public-private distinction. It's not really real. There's a narrow domain in which it has realness to it, but it's not that real. There's just like organizations full of people who are acting to pursue their incentives. And so, like in the case of the American banking system, the introduction of a currency that is going to be managed by a commission of bureaucrats on the other side of a gigantic ocean, that's going to eliminate the purpose of your existence. Like why would I as a banker want to participate in something like that? Why would I want to see my industry abolished and now I get ruled by some remote committee? I don't have to be I don't know, like an ardent Sam Francis reader or something. I don't have to be thoroughly schooled in Schmittian power politics to just be like, yeah, I don't like that idea. Let's come up with a different idea. It's sort of like you might think of it as like the elite equivalent of like a FanDuel American. Where you could be a FanDuel American and you don't give a shit about any like philosophical justification. You don't care about arguing about your thing or whatever. You just want to get drunk and you just want to like drink beers and go grill and watch the game and go to work and have your job and hang out with your kids and just live your life. Think about that person and then scale them up to someone with like a military or business or some sort of capital-intensive interest in the United States. Or you could be like an entirely scheming, malevolent psychopath, and you're like, I want the United States. I want the continent of North America. I want it to be mine, and I'm going to keep it, and I'm going to manage all the wealth that comes from it. You're not like a patriot. You're not like, oh, this is where my family grew up or whatever. You're just like, I want to. You're going to have an incentive to go to war against some sort of like globalist multinational panel of communist bureaucrats who want to run the entire world. So there's a wide net of influences who, when you consider the lay of the land being basically the most fundamental distinction, the one that matters the most is the people who want America to exist and be independent and sovereign and the people who don't. And if you're someone who wants America to exist and be sovereign and independent and self-determined, you're an American. If you don't, you're not. I don't care where you were born. I don't care where you grew up. I don't care how long you've been in the country. You can't consider yourself an American if you don't want America to exist as America per se. Because America as some sort of hired military goon economy for strip mining to exact capital controls over every other part of the world, that's not America. For you to be an American, you have to believe in America's right to self-determination. And this war is being fought on financial terms, which is part of this evolution of warfare. It's been an economic war. It's been an economic and financial war because this is in a certain sense, it's civilized, and in another sense, it's not. Like, how civilized is it to remove violence from the system? Like, what happens with little boys when you don't let them, like, get into fistfights? So there's there's this tension where on one hand, yeah, it's better to be able to do politics instead of, like armies lining up and slaughtering each other. Politics is on this continuum. It's like an evolution. Now, instead of lining our armies up and killing each other until someone surrenders, well, we're gonna line our armies up, and then we're just gonna total all the numbers up, and the one that has the most numbers wins, and we'll forego all the fighting. In a certain sense, that's like an evolution. This is like a technological development. We've conceived of this social technology that abstracts us away from bloodletting. Now we can fight more bloodless wars. Well, what's the downstream effect of that? The downstream effect of that is that we've gotten really bad at fighting wars, which has meant the odds of a war happening go up. Because people who aren't familiar with the costs of war, who don't have experience, don't have direct firsthand experience with it, they underestimate it. They don't avoid it sufficiently, which means it's inevitably going to happen. So in one sense, we've evolved to where now our wars are much less direct military conflict, and they've been abstracted into the currency. So now we're having currency wars. We're having trade wars. It's not that these didn't exist in the past. It's that we've leaned all the way into that. For the post-war period has been defined by the move away from direct hot conflicts directionally toward more of this soft warfare. But it's not going to last. Because the whole premise of it is essentially that we never have these kinds of wars again. But the more that you have those kinds of wars, the more it becomes, well, okay, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this whole elaborate Rube Goldberg machine of interlocking currencies and derivatives and all this bullshit of supply chains and all that? Why are we even keeping up this charade? It's hyper inefficient. It's compromising our ability to scale. So let's just have it out. Anyways, that's my lead-in for the conversation about the soft war thing with Jason Lowry. We'll get to that here in a little bit. I didn't expect to go on that rant, but I started feeling the spirit, so I just went with it. I've got a little submission here for this is one for all the wife jacks out there to make fun of the men. We earned this one. And honestly, I can't really relate to this, but I know that some of you guys will. I've never been defeated by a stroller, but I'm gonna play this one a little fast just because it's kind of long, but you'll get the idea.
I know this feeling.
Oh my God! Oh, I do too.
He can't get a collapse. He can't get a collapse.
One time I had to go without a stroller because
he's trying to press that button.
You can hear him cussing.
Oh, he ain't gonna have a stroller left.
It's hot out.
Oh, he dropped that in the seat.
He must have been pushing the wrong button.
Oh, that man might help him.
This guy. This is like a joke. How many dads does it take? I think it's that side button down there, isn't it?
I thought it was a side, like that middle, like in the very middle, that button.
Let's while you guys are watching, drop me some bets. Some of you may have already seen this, but where's the button? Where's the button that they're missing?
He's checking on his baby.
It's so hot.
I swear I would go help him, but I have no idea how to do these. My wife always helps.
But you know, all of them are different.
Oh, he's putting it back up. No, you keep it off.
Oh, that button knows for the seat. Well, that man was jogging. He said, oh, I bet he may know.
Here he comes.
Well, the baby ain't in it. It's been round and round. And then
look at this lady watching. I think every dad in the world can relate to this feeling.
it is awful warm.
I think that is what you do first.
He may have it figured out. I've never seen one quite like this. I'm not sure how to do it
I
myself.
think it's the wrong button that he's trying to do.
He's called somebody.
It's his wife, I can guarantee it.
Oh, yeah.
I can guarantee it's his wife.
Before me sweating that grandma.
You can hear him. This is the funniest thing I've ever seen. They're gonna figure it out. Okay, do I go talk to him?
Lord, he is so confused. Oh, wait.
Oh, here's a girl.
Oh, my Lord.
I know for that woman, that was one of the best moments of her life. She has never been, she's never been higher on herself. I don't think I've ever, maybe my wife will chime in here and remind me of something I'm forgetting, but I don't think I've ever been defeated by a stroller, but I've definitely been defeated by some things, and that's how you get me to turn the color of my shirt. The drones are going to eat these men alive. All right, let's do some Shinzo appreciating. This from Tesla Economics says, you can tell how much joy a Tesla organically generates by seeing Elon show Shinzo Abe the car's acceleration. I call it happiness on tap.
But now we're out of sight of the police. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh!
ローラーコースターだ。
I saw nothing. Get closer.
警察がいなかったから。
Oh, man. Good to see you, Space Cowboy. I don't know if you guys have ever driven a Tesla. It is legit. That especially the way, like the since it's like an electric engine, so it's very quiet, super smooth. It's just poof, you're just pinned. There's no shifting or anything. You're just stuck to your seat. There's not another car you could get for that cheap that could drive like that. Sean Farash, best Trump impression ever. He just dropped this video. He's been in the news, and I'll tell you guys about that here in just a second. But he dropped this video about this is him doing his Trump impression, talking about Rosie O'Donnell. And I'll play this video and then tell you why he's been in the news.
My fellow Americans, this is the greatest achievement of my administration to date. Rosie O'Donnell has deported herself out of the United States of America. She moved to Ireland. So much for luck of the Irish. That's a lot of bad luck when you look at it. Quite frankly, the worst luck the world has ever seen. But I just got off the phone with Ireland, and they said to me, "Sir, Rosie O'Donnell is now in our country. What do we do, sir?" I said, "You have to keep her." They said, "But, sir, she's going to cause another famine." I said, "That's your problem now. You have to keep her. Don't you dare send her back. If you send her back, I'm going to hit you with 4,000% tariffs if you send her back. We're not going to let it happen." They said, "But, sir, we can't deal with that."
He's
I
so
said, "But
good.
you don't want to do it. The tariffs are going to be worse than the famine when you look at it. It's going to be a lot worse. Don't do it. You don't want to do it." They said, "Sir, we're not going to do it. We're going to keep her." I said, "That's good. That's a good decision. Good luck. Good luck to you. It's not an easy thing to deal with. You know, it's a big problem. And when I say big, you look at her. There are very few people who are bigger than Rosie O'Donnell, and she's a huge problem, who was signing an executive order banning all ugly people from coming back into our country. And she is the ugliest person, both inside and out. So it is my distinct honor to announce that Rosie O'Donnell has left the United States for good. This is what we voted for. This is what we wanted. And this is the winning and promises made, promises kept as we make America great again. Goodbye and good riddance, Rosie O'Donnell. Nobody is going to miss you, believe me.
He is so good. Easily the best of all Trump impersonators. He has it. He has the voice. He's got the inflections. He's got all the intonations. He's got the cadence. Incredible. So he is has now been added to the list of online Trump-friendly influencers who have been swatted.
Hey guys, it's Sean, my wife Brennan, and just wanted to give you guys an update. We did just get swatted here in Tennessee. The officers said they received a phone call that somebody murdered somebody in the house and was planning a suicide by cop. So I received the call with that information. We cooperated with police. They were very nice.
They were actually very nice.
Very, very nice. They were not aware that this was going on across the country. Was that, how did you feel about that? What was going through your head when you saw officers in the backyard with guns?
I was shaking. I was terrified. I was the only one awake. He was asleep.
Yeah.
And they were just pointing their guns into the house, and I was very scared. I was very scared.
And that's the point, and that's what these people are trying to do. They are trying to silence folks who are not afraid to speak their mind online. And you've seen it happen to so many other people across the country. We're going to do what we can from Tennessee to try and get to the bottom of who's responsible for it. I'd like to see the Justice Department or somebody somewhere get involved with getting to the bottom of it, because you can see it's not a joke. All right? You're coming up to people's homes with very, very big guns that are very unsettling to a lot of people. And, one wrong move could create a disaster. And
Sean handled it very well. He was very calm and collected.
Yeah, because we're seeing it happening all across the country. Yeah. We have nothing to hide. None of this stuff happened. But the bottom line is that if the result was that the person or people who did this was that I was going to stop doing things, it's not going to happen. So we're not blinking. It sucked. It was not ideal. And then they sent pizza.
Yeah.
Domino's and Papa John's both showed up. So, then they said it was a cash order. That doesn't mean the person paid with cash. They meant it. You have to, COD. So for anybody else who's dealing with it, if you got pizza, you are not alone either. But bottom line is, I'm not going to stop. That's not the result that these people are going to get. If it happens to anybody else, feel free to let either one of us know on social media. It could definitely be worse. What happened to the J6ers was that times 100. So it could have definitely been worse.
Anyways, so Kash Patel has come out and reacted to this. And I just got to say, imagine what it would be to live like, or what it would be like to live in a country where when this sort of thing happens, the FBI director does not come out and make a statement about it, condemning it and vowing to investigate it. Imagine what that would be like. He says, I want to address the alarming rise in swatting incidents targeting media figures. The FBI is aware of this dangerous trend, and my team and I are already taking action to investigate and hold those responsible accountable. This isn't about politics. Weaponizing law enforcement against any American is not only morally reprehensible, but also endangers lives, including those of our officers. That will not be tolerated. We're fully committed to working with local law enforcement to crack down on these crimes. More updates to come. The absolute bare minimum. But it's wild to think that 6 months ago, you wouldn't have gotten a statement like this from the FBI. The FBI would have ignored it. The media probably would have ignored it. They wouldn't have talked about it at all. It's very odd to me, the selection of characters who are being targeted with this. I'm trying to I'm trying to figure out what their commonality is apart from being Twitter-based MAGA influencers. It's been sort of a little bit scattershot. It's not completely clear how they're deciding which people to target and to do this, and to what end. You know, it seems pretty short-sighted to me, honestly, like just from a strategic perspective. And it's not like I'm not going to be the one who's falling all over myself to ascribe competence to our enemies, but it's kind of haphazard. And it doesn't seem like the sort of thing that's going to, like, what it would. Do you think that you're going to get people to stop talking about this stuff publicly? There's no way that this is going to be, that doing this is going to make people like just, oh, okay, sorry, I guess I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to be publicly supportive of Trump anymore. It's just not going to have that effect. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. It's just, the whole story is very, very odd to me. And I kind of smell a rat, but I don't really know what rat I'm smelling. So I'll just leave it at that for now. Little update on the Trump-Putin thing here. So Trump publicly requested that Putin spare the Ukrainian soldiers in the Kursk region. I played the statement from Putin yesterday where he said we have them completely surrounded and their option is surrender or die. And so Trump has said, please spare the soldiers, which is an interesting thing to say. That's talking past the close a little bit. And so Putin responds. He says, we have read today's appeal from President Trump to spare the lives of servicemen in the Ukrainian army in the Kursk region. In this regard, please note that Ukrainian militants have committed numerous crimes against civilians. These acts, as I've already stated, are classified by us as terrorism. At the same time, we are sympathetic to President Trump's call to be guided by humanitarian considerations regarding these servicemen. In this regard, I emphasize that if they lay down their arms and surrender, they will be guaranteed life and dignified treatment. To effectively implement President Trump's call, there must be an appropriate order from the military and political leadership of Ukraine to its troops to lay down their arms and surrender. So we're putting a finer point on it now. He's now saying explicitly what I'm seeing here is a coordinated messaging effort. So we're gonna negotiate a ceasefire. Hey, look at that, we got a ceasefire. Hey, Russia, you want to agree to that? You know, we bludgeoned Ukraine into accepting a ceasefire. Hey, Russia, you want to agree to that? Yeah, we're happy to agree to that on these terms. Okay, well, of those two terms, you say the options for these guys are surrender or die, so please don't kill them. Okay. Yeah, we reserve the right to kill them, but in the interest of pursuing humanitarian causes, you know, if the Ukrainian government issues them a surrender, gives them a surrender order, then yes, we're happy to move forward. So to me, what I'm seeing thus far looks like the Trump administration effectively facilitating this negotiation between Russia and Ukraine, where they've backed Ukraine into a corner, and they're now depending upon Russian cooperation to keep moving toward them. Now the posture to Ukraine is like, they said they won't kill your men. You don't have to have any more men die. So now they're pitting the people against the president. The people of Ukraine against the president of Ukraine. He can now say, yes, we will stop. I'm going to issue them the order to surrender. And if they surrender, then the process proceeds. Now, of course, you know, anything could happen going forward, but just watching the way these are playing out, there's a whole lot of cooperation going on here in the messaging between the U.S. and Russia. This is a very interesting thing that kind of flew under the radar, but when you follow good people like I do, like Huntsman, you get to see these things. So he says, is Secretary of State Rubio about to destroy a key opposition weapon in the battle over illegal immigration, trade, tariffs, and import-export controls? I think so. Screenshotted is a very interesting action here from Secretary of State Rubio and the executive branch to be effective as of today. So this is the screenshot. And this is from the Department of State. Determination, Foreign Affairs Functions of the United States. Serving as America's 72nd Secretary of State is the highest honor of my professional life. In Executive Order 14150, President Trump has given me a clear direction to place our core national interests as the guiding mission of American foreign policy and to always put America and American citizens first. Securing America's borders and protecting its citizens from external threats is the first priority foreign affairs function of the United States. This effort requires the United States to marshal all available resources and authorities. These resources and authorities also include, but are not limited to, those of Department of State, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, and Department of Justice, and many other federal agencies. The threats to U.S. citizens from an unsecured border can include foreign spies, contraband, and harmful materials that flow across the border, as well as unchecked mass migration, narcotics trafficking, human smuggling and trafficking, and other destabilizing or unlawful activities, including the flow of dangerous drugs, weapons, and technology. Eliminating or mitigating these threats involves visa policies, export control enforcement policies and practices, and other foreign affairs functions entrusted to me as Secretary of State under the Constitution at the direction of the President and by statute. So he just created a whole big bundle of things here that are all border crossing, anything coming across borders. People, contraband, technology, weapons, everything, money. The Department of State enjoys primacy among federal agencies in the conduct of our foreign policy. When he appointed me as Secretary of State, the President entrusted me with all matters respecting the conduct of foreign affairs, including my primary foreign affairs duty, the duty to protect the people of the United States from any threats originating from foreign actors or from foreign soil. For the Department of State, that includes all policy related to the protection and travel of U.S. citizens overseas, visa operations and visa issuance, implementation of the Arms Export Control Act, and implementation of the Mutual Educational and Cultural Exchange Act of 1961, as amended among other authorities. But the scope of a foreign affairs function of the United States is much broader. For these reasons, I hereby determine that all efforts conducted by any agency of the federal government to control the status, entry, and exit of people and the transfer of goods, services, data, technology, and other items across the borders of the United States constitute a foreign affairs function of the United States under the Administrative Procedure Act, 5 U.S. Code 553 and 554. Very interesting. So what does Huntsman say about this? It would seem that the admin intends to thread the needle on certain live wire issues such as immigration, international narcotics trafficking, tariffs, and export controls by formally interpreting certain activities and related authorities of state and other executive branch departments to be broadly covered as foreign affairs under the Administrative Procedures Act. These activities and policies are summarized in paragraph 5 of the notice as all efforts conducted by any agency of the federal government to control the status, entry, and exit of people and the transfer of goods, services, data, technology, and other items across the borders of the United States. More succinctly, if it's a person, thing, or bit/byte moving in or out of the U.S., Secretary of State now formally, rather than tacitly as before, holds the big stick. This finding thus specifically grants Secretary of State primacy in terms of deciding when and how the interagency departments and offices should implement actions taken as part of the larger foreign affairs framework, should he choose to exercise that authority, i.e. more granular control from policy to adoption. The language of the notice suggests that certain of these foreign affairs activities across the interagency must be urgently aligned more closely to a cohesive foreign affairs vision, undertaken as part of a unified framework of coordinated action and done so at a much greater speed. The current paradigm has for decades been that the departments and agencies take the directives issued by POTUS and implement them as they interpret the policy directive to apply to their specific authorities and functions. This generally produces a significant amount of friction and time lag between executive order or directive and full implementation due to many large-scope orders having to be hot-potatoed between secretaries and implemented in pieces across myriad stakeholders. This is where the decentralized aspect of it actually makes it much more complex and inefficient. And what we're seeing is we have the Article 2 executive president, and now we're getting an Article 2 executive Secretary of State, where everything constituting foreign affairs now flows through the Secretary of State, who answers directly to the president. We're getting within the bands of existing statutes and the Constitution, we're getting a radical restructuring of the process within the executive branch. It's being streamlined and stripped down and centralized in a much stricter hierarchy. You could almost say that the Secretary of State is kind of like an icon of the president. By interpreting and consolidating numerous of these interagency activities under the foreign affairs remit belonging to state, Secretary of State can thus rapidly adjudicate the proposed actions and direct them to be modified or implemented on a timetable and in the manner of his choosing. Here's where it gets interesting. APA is the law that established the familiar 30-day public comment and review period on most categories of executive actions and policies. This provision in APA introduces a window of time where actors hostile to POTUS's agenda have the ability to wage lawfare via friendly judges in lower courts, take coordinated action with insiders to disrupt or delay policy implementation inside the departments, mount public pressure campaigns on the Hill, or all of the above. This public comment and review window has been exploited relentlessly and effectively by the anti-Trump orc horde. However, a secretary, under certain specific conditions and exceptions, urgency being the main one, may waive the regular statutory requirement for public review by invoking the Foreign Affairs exception of the Administrative Procedures Act, thus allowing a foreign affairs-related policy or directed action to be implemented immediately. Looking at the larger implications, it would appear that Secretary of State is not making a power grab here, as many might accuse him of. Rather, he is shielding various departments and offices who are tasked with implementing specific actions under his much broader scope of authorities, and potentially opening time and space to maneuver while eliminating the key adversary advantage of time. If this is in fact what Secretary of State is up to, it's an incredibly canny move. And Senator Brophy, Greg here, says they clearly have help from people who have deep knowledge of how to work the system. This admin is going to go down as the most consequential since FDR. And Huntsman said, remember me saying before and after the election that this admin was showing significant indicators of running effective counterinsurgency/counterintelligence tactics applied to political conflict. There are some hitters and ringers in the inner circle advising policy and timing. So remember that. Keep that in mind when I'm talking about Bitcoin. All right, so the FHA subprime bubble. The share of borrowers with debt-to-income ratios greater than 43% from 2000 to 2024. So this is among FHA mortgages. Look at that line. As of 2024, 64.47% of FHA borrowers have debt-to-income ratios over 43%. So the FHA, the affordable mortgages, are greater than 2/3 full of people who are over-leveraged in their house. So there's a reason that this has wound up this way. It has to do with COVID. And so this here from John Comiskey says, a number of folks have commented that M3 Melody, this person here, has been ringing the bell of the FHA loan abuse for quite a while. A true statement. I've replied that she was a large source of inspiration for what I'm doing, but it's more specific than that. A month ago, Melody and I were chatting about the January MBS data that had just come out. I was showing her the data on loans that had been removed from MBS pool, mortgage-backed security pools, for loss mitigation, which was spiking at the end of the year in the VA portfolio with the expiration of the foreclosure moratorium. So this is the moratorium on foreclosures from COVID. She honed right in on that, noting the story there, one that needs additional research and telling when time permits. And then she asked me two key questions. Can you figure out the redefault rates for loans from the MBS data, since no one really reports on that? And two, can you build a life of loan history for individual loans, including ones that have undergone modifications? These questions prompted me to look more granularly into the portfolio, leading to the discovery of the modifications of doom and the discovery of the gaming of endless FHA loss mitigation at the individual loan level, which I now highlight each day. In part, each FHA loan of the day is a public continuation of our conversation from that day, but for Melody's prompting, the FHA loan of the day series wouldn't exist. So here's a video about this. This is from Darth Powell, Vlad the Inflator. Says, everyone ready to have their fucking minds blown? Home buyers are never making payments on government loans. Not a single fucking payment.
Under the guise of pandemic relief, the administration masked the growing troubles in the housing market by paying off borrowers and mortgage servicers to prevent foreclosures. Of the 52,531 FHA loans last year that went seriously delinquent within their first year, only 9 resulted in foreclosure.
Of the 52,531 FHA loans last year that went seriously delinquent within their first year. So with mortgages issued within 1 year, it has gone seriously delinquent, which I don't remember if that's 3 months or 6 months. I think it might be 3 months of missed payments. Only 9 of them were actually foreclosed on.
The FHA actually introduced a program that pays mortgage servicers to make borrowers miss payments for them. Missed payments are added to the loan's principal but without interest. It's essentially a glorified government grant. The FHA also pays servicers to cut monthly payments for delinquent borrowers by 25% for 3 years, with the payment reductions also added to the principal without interest. Essentially, the government got rid of bankruptcies. And this isn't just some Wall Street Journal BS. We can prove it with a very specific example. This is John Comiskey on X. I really don't know why this isn't a bigger story because it's absolutely shocking. John, I believe, is an engineer at a mortgage tech company, and he's got some serious skill in finding these gem examples in the FHA program. He regularly combs the Ginnie Mae MBS disclosure database for evidence of this happening and occasionally tweets out what he calls the FHA loan of the day. It's actually amazing. Give him a follow. He deserves more attention on this. In this specific case, he found an FHA loan for a guy who took out a $236,000 loan at 3.5% in Tennessee in early 2020. The first due date on this loan was the 1st of May 2020. From July 2020 to July 2022, a period of 26 months, including the May 1st date, this guy made 0 payments. That summer, the FHA stepped in and provided a partial claim of $38,000 to cover the missed payments in that period. This brings the loan current, meaning the arrears are paid off, but it added a 0-interest subordinate lien to the back of the loan. Essentially, this is just a government payment with a promise that the borrower will eventually pay later or when he sells the house. So this man in Tennessee is now 2 years into this house, living basically for free, but it gets worse. From July 2022 to April 2023, a period lasting 9 months, this man in this real example once again makes 0 payments. And again, the FHA issues a partial claim of $13,000 to cover the 9 months of missed payments from 2022 to 2023. This once again brings the loan current, adding to the 0-interest subordinate lien. The borrower has now been in the home for 3 years without a single payment, but it gets worse once again. From April 2023 to November 2024, 19 months, this borrower, you guessed it, makes 0 payments once again. 5 years without a payment since the loan started in May of 2020. Now, instead of finally foreclosing that November, the loan is modified. The interest rate is raised from 3.5% to 7.25%, and the monthly payment increases by approximately $400. Not sure how that's going to help with payments, but to recap, that's 5 years with no payments and no foreclosure. That is straight up fraud and needs to be stopped, and it's probably a big reason why the market can't seem to correct, because the government has essentially outlawed bankruptcy. It will be interesting to
see. You know what I'm wondering? Those of you who listened to Mr. Pete Quinones, you may remember the episode that he did with Stormy Waters about a month ago, talking about the way that these major funds have been using a whole network of LLCs to buy up all the inventory. And they're able to do that, and now like BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street, they're able to buy up all this inventory, and then they can manipulate the rental market and leverage up their own portfolio. Not leverage, but elevate their own portfolio by rigging rental rates, essentially. I'm very curious to know how many of these homes how many of these mortgages that have been running like this, creating this big old bubble, I wonder how many of these are owned by, or there's like nobody actually living in them. How much of this is just straight up mortgage fraud? I don't even have a thought off the top of my head of exactly how they would, how they would be gaming the system in that sense, but they're basically creating an opportunity to crash the market, which would give an even greater opportunity to scoop everything back up again. And is there some other way that they've been able to, is this some slush fund that they're using where they create all of these mortgage-backed securities that they can leverage against with the expectation that eventually we're going to force the mass default with us positioned to take advantage of it. So as long as everybody defaults harder than us, then we're better off. I'm very curious how much of that. I'm sure there's plenty of people who I'm just trying to wrap my mind around the person who in Tennessee gets a mortgage for $236,000, 3.5%, and then just never makes a payment on it for 5 years. I guess it might depend on what part of Tennessee they're in, if you catch my drift, but that just seems, there's something very, very suspicious about that. I could see like making one or two and then not. But how much could this be? Yeah, USAID. How much could this be tied into? Like, I want to know these actual what mortgages these homes are attached to. This is going to be trouble. The Wall Street Journal. This is February 23rd. Biden's mortgage relief fuels higher housing prices. It has created another subprime housing bubble and put taxpayers at risk. Trump should end it. Why do housing prices keep climbing despite higher interest rates? The federal government has allowed borrowers to take out bigger mortgages than they can afford. To prevent foreclosures, it's bailing them out when they miss payments. Behold, another subprime housing bubble. The problems began when the Obama administration eased underwriting standards by enabling more home buyers whose debt payments exceed 43% of income to qualify for government-backed loans. Such borrowers are risky because they might not be able to make payments if their income drops or expenses rise. As home prices climbed, the FHA insured more loans to financially stretched borrowers with as little as 3.5% down. No skin off lenders' backs if borrowers later defaulted, since the mortgages were backed by the government. In 2007, 35% of new FHA borrowers had debt-to-income ratios above 43%. So about a third of them had DTI over 43%. By 2020, 54% did. As housing prices and inflation surged, borrowers became more stretched. The FHA kept insuring mortgages to borrowers who were increasingly leveraged. About 64% of FHA borrowers last year exceeded the 43% threshold. The FHA loan portfolio is far riskier than it was before the 2008 housing crisis. The American Enterprise Institute's Ed Pinto and Tobias Peter estimate that 79% of FHA first-time borrowers have a month or less in financial reserves. Not enough to make mortgage payments if their household expenses rise, as most have owing to inflation. No surprise, many are missing payments, especially recent borrowers. About 7.05% of FHA mortgages issued last year went seriously delinquent. 90 or more days past when a payment is due, within 12 months. That's more than at the 2008 peak of the subprime bubble. Under the guise of COVID relief, the Biden administration masked the growing troubles in the housing market by paying off borrowers and mortgage servicers to prevent foreclosures. Of the 52,531 FHA loans last year that went seriously delinquent within their first year, only 9 resulted in foreclosure. The FHA instituted a program that pays mortgage servicers to make borrowers' missed payments for them. Missed payments are added to the loan's principal, but without interest. The FHA also pays servicers to cut monthly payments for delinquent borrowers by 25% for 3 years, with the payment reductions also added to the principal without interest. Consider a borrower who misses 5 $4,000 monthly mortgage payments. I love how they pick the person with a $4,000 monthly mortgage. The servicer will add the $20,000 in missed payments to the mortgage and reduce monthly payments by $1,000 for 3 years, adding another $36,000 to their mortgage. So now the mortgage is for whatever it was before, plus $56,000 with the interest still being applied to the original principal, but the mortgage body itself is larger. If he misses payments again, the servicer rinses and repeats, getting paid $1,750 every time it lathers up. The FHA also lets servicers charge borrowers legal fees, typically several $1,000s, that are added to the mortgage principal. The FHA made $556,841 incentive payments to servicers over the past year to prevent foreclosures, nearly as many as the new mortgages it insured. Government-backed mortgage relief has become a cash cow for servicers, some of which originated the risky loans they are paid not to foreclose. Moral hazard, anyone? One result is that many FHA borrowers owe more than their original mortgage and more than their homes are worth. They are essentially trapped in their homes even if they want to sell and move. Another result is that home prices keep increasing because borrowers who don't pay their mortgages and never should have qualified for loans can't get foreclosed on or be forced to sell their homes. Getting foreclosed on these days is like flunking out of college. It takes effort. You have to reject repeated offers for mortgage relief. Government-sponsored enterprises Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac instituted similar home retention programs for delinquent borrowers with the Biden administration's blessing. The cost of their mortgage relief gets socialized in higher rates charged to homebuyers whose mortgages they guarantee. Taxpayers are on the hook if the FHA insurance fund, financed by premiums on mortgages it backs, goes broke paying off borrowers and servicers to prevent foreclosures. The FHA annual report to Congress didn't disclose the cost of such payments, and the agency didn't furnish them on my request. Perhaps Doge could dig into its financial books. The Biden administration built a house of cards that could collapse if Trump officials dared to end the mortgage giveaways, as they should. Foreclosures would inevitably increase, which would cause home prices to fall sharply in lower-income neighborhoods with more FHA mortgages. More borrowers would then fall underwater, ballooning taxpayer losses, though homes might also become more affordable for people who don't already own them. But what a mess. And who will get blamed? Not the folks who inflated the bubble. This is organized crime. This is just straight up crime. And it's a very distinct type of crime. Money laundering, usury. It's criminal. The last administration is going to be going back in retrospect and looking at the just unmitigated, shameless crime they engaged in. Is remarkable. I mean, this country needs a debt jubilee really, really bad. This is why the debt jubilee existed. To prevent these sorts of things from accumulating. There's a place for interest. There's a place for pricing future money and selling it as a product. But it has to be constrained. This is just criminal. Think about like all the people, all the genuinely well-meaning innocent people in these situations who they're now upside down in a house they never should have been approved for in the first place. They're going to get foreclosed on. Then they're not like, who's going to rent to them? They're never going to get a mortgage. It's going to be a decade at least before they can get a mortgage again. And if you're an FHA borrower, that means you're a young person. So what this has been a forced wealth transfer from young people to old people to maintain asset prices by defrauding the younger generations. And making homeownership an insurmountable hurdle for them so that the existing homeowners can maintain their housing prices. Josh Ham, this is fraud. I need bureaucrats and managers to go to jail for the crimes they're committing against my people. Yes. If people don't go to, like, sending people to jail for this sort of thing is the compassionate, merciful thing to do. Because the alternatives are much, much worse. That whole rant I had at the beginning about us like making our conflicts more bloodless, that's not going to last forever. I'm very glad that the administration now has their sights set on rectifying these sorts of problems. And they need to. They need to, and anyone who stands in their way needs to be treated like a traitor. I don't care anymore. Feeling very Fed posty right now. So, Wall Street finally admits Doge's work to detox government is critical, but will be brutally painful. This is from Zero Hedge. Almost 2 years ago, we revealed the $1 trillion stealth stimulus behind Bidenomics, which for the sake of brevity we exposed as budget-busting, debt-funded stimulus payments that flowed straight into the government spending/investment line item of the GDP ledger, providing a powerful and instant boost to GDP through extremely inefficient and corrupt allocation of resources by government bureaucrats. Gee, wonder what that would look like. Which cost $1 trillion in federal debt every 100 days. $1 trillion in federal debt every 100 days. And while nobody in the Biden admin cared about the massive debt incurrence it left in its wake, everyone was delighted by the artificial sugar rush this debt-fueled spending spree afforded GDP by way of the U.S. government, as shown below. Government spending growth in U.S. GDP. The dates on the bottom down here, it starts with March of 2020 on the far left, and then it is, or is this quarters? This is quarters. Yeah, Q3 of 2020 up to Q4 of 2024. And let's see, what is this here? The black line is government consumption expenditures and gross investment. The blue is federal, and the green is state and local. It is this artificial growth and the associated debt cancer that Doge is trying to root out while reviving the private sector. Unfortunately, that pernicious transition, which took place gradually but almost irreversibly over the past decade, will be brutal and stubborn to reverse. But while we've been banging the table and warning that the days of sugar highs for U.S. growth will end in tears, and more recently both Trump and Musk/Doge have become fervent converts to the Church of Fiscal Prudence, it was unprecedented for Wall Street banks, whose gravy train depended on a continuation of the debt-funded status quo, to admit what was obvious for all to see. Until now. In his latest must-read report, full note available to pro subs, links are here. Kingpilled Substack is where I will have all the links to everything I've gone through today. Bank of America's Research Investment Committee head, Jared Woodard, writes that the U.S. had never been more government dependent. It relies on government for 85% of job growth, 33% of all spending, and worst of all, 6 to 7% budget deficits, all of which are at record high, excluding crisis and war. It's crazy to me that there's still people who think that we're like living in peacetime right now. They're like, oh, is there going to be a recession? Or, oh, what if a war starts? I'm like, my default settings have been that we're in the middle of recession and war for as long as I can remember. We agree with all of that. After all, we've written about it for years. As for what the B of A strategist said next, namely that economic growth has been enabled by unsustainable government support and protectionist policies, the White House should hang on billboards across the country. Here are the details from Bank of America. Employment. 1 year ago, 85% of U.S. job market growth was in government and sectors dependent on government spending like health and education. That number is now falling, today at 70%, and as B of A puts it, quote, a greater private sector share of job growth should raise productivity, end quote. Which confirms that government jobs are about as unproductive and inefficient as they get, something Doge has been claiming since day one. So this exhibit here is from the B of A Global Investment Strategy, Bloomberg. This is public sector job growth is rolling over. Government plus education and health as percent of total payroll growth. Consumption. In 2024, 1/3 of GDP came from government spending, a record high excluding periods of war or crisis. This was financed by 6 to 7% budget deficits, another unwelcome peacetime record. Peacetime. Exhibit 4 here is government spending equals 1/3 of GDP, record excluding crisis periods. This is federal plus state and local expenditures as percent of U.S. GDP. So it starts down here in 1929, and you can see the peak in World War II, small peak in the Vietnam, another peak in the Gulf War, then it goes down, then another large peak at the Great Financial Crisis, and then a huge peak in COVID. Today, it's down here. Trade. Every G20 country has higher average tariff rates than the United States, save 2. And most countries hide the true costs and expensive barriers like quotas, price controls, labeling requirements, and testing rules. Including tariffs and non-tariff barriers, access to the U.S. market is far cheaper than any G20 country, 11% on average. So we have the world's largest consumer market and wealthiest consumer market, and access to our market is far cheaper than any G20 country. And you can see this. Look at the United Kingdom up here. Look at China. Look at Russia. Saudi Arabia. Canada. Italy, France, Germany, Indonesia, Japan, Mexico, United States. It's free to come. It's free to come into our market. So how much is our market worth to us, huh? We also agree with Woodard's much less pleasant conclusion, one which lays out the huge stakes gamble facing Trump as he tries to hand off U.S. growth from unproductive, debt-funded government growth to productive, self-funded private sector growth. As we first laid out over a month ago, let's open this. Here's the bigger play at hand and why there is only token pushback to Doge. This is from February 8th. You cut enough spending, even if it's all grift and fraud, you eventually get a recession guaranteed. That's all Congress is waiting for, because then they use the emergency to vote through a far greater spending package. Will someone please think of all the unemployed? One which eclipses all of Doge's spending cuts. What Musk is doing in trying to streamline the government is admirable, but ultimately it would be Congress that decides the end game, and there things are as status quo as always. And I don't really agree with that, but I don't tend to agree with a number of things Zero Hedge says. And as the B of A strategist decries, the global handoff from big government to the free market may prove slippery, but it seems necessary given large deficits and bloated debt burdens. In other words, brace for lots of pain as Trump tries to fix years and decades of uniparty graft and corruption. And not just in the U.S., according to Woodard, the handoff is global. The public-to-private shift is happening everywhere. In Japan, accelerating corporate reforms, buybacks and capex are locking 206 trillion yen in cash, 33% of GDP, to support a stock market rally this spring, according to Masashi Akutsu. In Germany, Chancellor Merz is ready to release the debt brake and fund $1 trillion defense and infrastructure, €1 trillion defense and infrastructure spending. In China, pro-stock market and private news could be a signal in favor of domestic consumption. In Argentina, fiscal cuts worth 5% of GDP have balanced the budget, causing a 25-point drop in inflation and boosted stocks. Of course, the effects won't be seen overnight. B of A cautions that it may take some time for private sector job growth to accelerate, for government workers to resettle, for broad-based corporate profits to rise, and for global trade to find a new equilibrium. Not surprisingly, earlier today, Howard Lutnick said that Americans will only feel the power of Trump's economy by Q4, meaning the economic slowdown and recession that hits in Q2 and Q3 will still be Biden's doing. Ultimately, the good news outweighs the bad, and as Woodard concludes, quote, the likely productivity gains from a market-based economic reboot are greater than risks, while the risks from the unsustainable status quo of debt-financed, tepid, and narrow economic growth are severe. We agree completely. What an odd way for a global superpower to manage its own economics. Almost as if it's not being done for the interests of the great global superpower. From the Kobayashi letter, gold prices are surging. As the S&P 500 has erased $5+ trillion, gold is now set to cross above a record $20 trillion in market cap. Gold has more than quadrupled the S&P 500's return over the last 12 months. Gold is telling us something. Let us explain. Now, this is from a couple days ago, and I believe it's already gone up past 3,000. Gold has crushed most asset classes over the last 12 months. In fact, while the S&P 500 has risen 11% since March 2024, gold is up nearly 44%. And while the S&P 500 is down 5% year to date, gold is officially up over 10% year to date. Is this the strongest gold market in history? Historically speaking, gold prices are viewed as a safe haven that rises with a weaker dollar and lower rates. However, for months now, gold has risen with high rates, a historically strong US dollar, and a strong stock market. This defies just about all historical trends. Brent Johnson is yelling somewhere. And physical gold demand in the U.S. has gone through the roof. U.S. gold imports hit a record $30.4 billion in January, marking a second consecutive month of sharp increases. Here is this plotted out visually since 2016. Just for context, this is U.S. gold imports right now, all the way up here, compared to, this is 2020. During COVID, there was a spike, and then 2022, I'm assuming this was probably associated with the Russia-Ukraine kicking off. This is double the amount seen during the 2020 pandemic. Physical gold buying is extremely strong. This confirms our thesis from early 2024. Gold has become the global safe haven trade above U.S. Treasury bonds. Why is this the case? The U.S. is now spending 44% of GDP per year, the same levels as World War II. Deficit spending has made U.S. government bonds less safe. Adding fuel to the fire is the recent surge in recession worries. Gold search interest about a recession in the U.S. has surged to levels seen during 2008, the 2020 pandemic. U.S. consumers' perceived likelihood of a recession over the next 12 months rose to 67% in February. They've got a little ad for their premium member service. Amid the recent market volatility, U.S. stocks are seeing massive outflows. U.S. stocks saw $1.1 billion in outflows last week, according to B of A data. Some of this is rotated into gold, with gold now up 3% since February 28th. And even as markets bounce, gold is strong. You can pause it here if you want to see the weekly flows by client sector and size. On top of this, we are seeing similar trends in Asia. China's gold reserves hit a record $73.5 billion last month. India's gold reserves reached $70.9 billion, also an all-time high. Global gold demand jumped 24% year over year in 2024 to a record $382 billion. Additionally, as trade war worries have mounted, gold demand has risen. Bank of America's fund manager survey showed 58% of fund managers saying gold would perform best in a trade war. Even as a trade war means a stronger U.S. dollar, fund managers think it rises further. Another ad for their thing. In January, M2 money supply rose plus 3.9% year over year, the fastest pace in 30 months. As the money supply has expanded, gold has become more valuable. Gold markets continue to be a crucial leading indicator. So here's the M2 going back to September of 2018. So you can see how much it expanded during COVID, came all the way back down, even went negative for a period of time, and now it's on the rise again. And virtually everything here for gold is also making a case. It's going to be on a lagging, there's going to be a lag to it, but these are all cases for Bitcoin as well. They're going to be moving more in alignment going forward, I would say. And then this one is also very interesting. So I put the two of this with the last one. They all kind of fit together. And this story with the previous one, you got Bank of America coming out and basically providing Wall Street cover for Doge. Now here's Morgan Stanley with a massive call. As Tesla stock falls below its November 5th low, Morgan Stanley is calling for a historic rally to $800 next. This would imply a 300% rally, which they say can happen within 12 months. Here's how they see it happening. Let's begin with some context. Between November 5th and December 17th, Tesla rallied a massive 91%. The stock had a record market cap of $1.5 trillion before falling below $400 a share as the trade war began. In 1 month, Tesla is down 33% to pre-election levels. So this was the election right here. Then this big run up, and then this fall off all the way back down here to pre-election levels. Morgan Stanley thinks this is a huge buying opportunity. They specifically note that this is an AI play, as Tesla is a, quote, embodied AI compounder. Morgan Stanley believes that the recent drop is due to negative brand sentiment just as much as fundamental sales data and market degrossing. quote, we see the pullback as a buying opportunity for an embodied AI compounder. And they note that the recent decline is due to weak delivery data. Tesla's January sales were down 45% year over year in January, according to Bloomberg. Morgan Stanley sees Tesla and Elon Musk employing Doge-like actions to reduce costs and address excess capacity. This would be huge. I suspect that part of this is because of their preparations for rolling out the robotaxi and Optimus. Furthermore, Morgan Stanley believes the drop is largely sentiment-based. They note that their discussions with investors were all about Tesla being the AI winner at the December record high of about 488. Now it's back to management distraction, which we have seen multiple times before. Management distraction. Basically, people are mad about Elon Musk. Here's the boldest part about the call. Morgan Stanley believes their $800 bull case could be reached within the next 12 months. This would make Tesla a $2.5 trillion company. I think it would make Elon a trillionaire too. Morgan Stanley says the immense volatility means the stock can hit both 200 and 800 within the next 12 months. Here are their catalysts for upside. 1, Austin robotaxi unveil between June and August. 2, federal rulemaking around autonomous vehicles. 3, AI/humanoid day for Tesla's Optimus. And 4, other technological and commercial milestones. Their call is both fundamental and sentiment-based. And President Trump just reaffirmed his support for Elon Musk and Tesla. Last night, President Trump said he's going to, quote, buy a brand new Tesla tomorrow morning as a show of confidence and support for Elon Musk. The initial reaction was a 6% rebound in Tesla. This comes after Tesla posted its 7th worst day in history yesterday. The stock fell 15.4% in its worst single-day decline since 2020. In under 3 months, Tesla erased more than half of its entire value while reporting just Q4's earnings results. Sentiment is everything. Morgan Stanley says Tesla is cheap from a valuation perspective. The pullback has brought the stock to a 19x fiscal year 30 price-to-earnings ratio, according to their models. Additionally, it has lowered the fiscal year 30 EV/EBITDA ratio to just 10x. Tesla is Morgan Stanley's top pick in U.S. autos. Yesterday's drop put Tesla near its most oversold daily RSI in history. Tesla's stock daily RSI is now down to 21, just 5 points away from its lowest level on record. 2025 is truly a historic year. Now, an interesting related factor here. Hold on just a sec. I got to get the... before I keep going, I need to look up, or I need to hit the tweet again. Follow. Still live. Come join us. Okay. So this next one here is something that a fellow Tom Luongo appreciator pulled onto my radar. So remember the story that I read to you guys the other day, or it was the executive action where Trump told China to get the hell out, effectively. And then I played you guys the clip of Luke Gromen talking about how the Nasdaq is one of the largest Belt and Road hubs in the Western Hemisphere, or the largest, I think he said. And you can see the day that Trump says, get the hell out, on February 21, the Nasdaq goes... So with that context here, first I'll play the video here, and then I'll comment on it.
The Mag 7 became a reserve asset for foreign investors, including central banks. Just as they park U.S. dollars into treasuries, they parked U.S. dollars into stocks, particularly those Mag 7. And just to quantify, the Norges Bank, which is not a commercial bank in Norway, it is the Norwegian central bank. If you look at their Fed filings as of December 31st, they owned 324 million shares of NVIDIA. They were the 10th largest shareholder of NVIDIA. The Swiss National Bank, that has printed money out of thin air to buy U.S. stocks, they owned about 90 million shares of NVIDIA. Now, that's one stock, but this became a reserve holding. So if you look at over the last year, you can really see that the fund flows into these stocks, or I should say the stock performance of them, really correlated well with the dollar because the whole world piled into these names, not just foreigners, but retail, institutional. Everyone had to be in these names because these are the names that worked. And that's the thing with the S&P 500 is that the higher it goes, the bigger the market caps get, the more money goes into them, furthering the increase. So now we're beginning to get a taste of what the opposite is like, but also questioning the fundamentals and the growth rates from here going forward, with DeepSeek being obviously a main catalyst, and of course with Tesla, with Musk and all that stuff going on with that as well.
So I guess for those who don't know, the Mag 7 is the Magnificent Seven, which is Amazon, Google, Metaplanet, Amazon, Google, Meta, Tesla, and there's 4 of them. The other 3 are escaping my mind right now. So the point he's making here about the Mag 7 being a reserve asset for foreign investors. Well, so the Nasdaq is tanking. Mag 7 is down as well with the rest of the stock market. And you see Tesla has been for a long time. I think all of these things here are connected. And part of the reason why the stock market is going down is not just there's multiple factors here. It's not just sentiment, although a lot of it is sentiment. It's also malicious uninvest. What's the term I'm looking for here? To take your investment away, to de-invest, disinvest. There's malicious attempts at trying to crash the stock market to put political pressure on Trump, coming from overseas people. And then there's also China being like, you told us to get out, and we're getting out. So Mark Foley here said the correction is an EU/Davos play. As Tom Luongo and Alex Craner have been saying, this confirms it. This looks like the slingshot move down as Christina Lagarde, tries to destroy Powell. Game on. Luongo said, good catch. All right, so remember the whole rant that I did at the beginning, talking about you've got these two different, the most important factions that matter are, I guess one of the better ways you could frame this has already been done by Thomas 777, where he said there's the globalists and the people who are against the globalists. Like, those are the only two factions that exist. So as far as we're concerned, the factions that exist are this pool of uniparty, Davos, British remnant, whole continental Europe network, World Economic Forum people. And their intersecting interests. And then, I don't know what you would want to call the American faction, the patriots, the sovereigntists, Americans. You just say Americans. They're powerful American military and business and financial interests who are focused on energy policy and space and not having the country taken over by foreign interests. They're trying to protect their own assets. Yes, divest was the term I was looking for. So here is a presentation. I found this posted on Twitter. I don't know if it's a TED Talk. I don't know if TED Talks get real punchy about copyright stuff or whatever, so I didn't want to play the YouTube version. I found it on Twitter. This is Jason Lowry introducing his thesis. Now, remember, this is a TED Talk, so it's designed to be not a comprehensive delineation of every last point. It's more of an overview, but I believe he was giving this to an audience. I don't know what DAU. Let me just look this up real quick. Is this like a defense TED Talk DAU? Imagining how the department thinks. Is this a Department of Defense? Yeah, okay. So this is a specific Department of Defense TED Talk edition. And so he's giving this presentation to his military superiors. I'll tell you more about Jason Lowry after I play this.
So one of my favorite quotes from military history is by General Ferdinand Foch, the supreme Allied commander of World War I, who said that airplanes are interesting toys, but of no military value whatsoever. With 100 years of hindsight, we can look back at quotes like this and share a laugh at how bad people can be, at seeing how new technologies are going to change the future of warfare. But what if there's technologies around us today that we think about in the same vein? What if we're just as guilty as General Foch was at seeing how new technologies are going to change the nature of national defense? I believe that's exactly what's happening now with this new technology called Bitcoin. Instead of being a new form of money or a new financial payment system, I believe that it would be more accurate to describe Bitcoin as a new type of cyber warfighting technology, and I think it's going to become critical to national defense. Sounds crazy, right? Bitcoin's interesting technology, but of no military value, right? Well, before you go all Ferdinand Foch on me, please just indulge me for a second and let me explain my reasoning. If you study nature, you'll notice that animals, practically all of them, secure their resources the same way, by using physical power. Whether they're trying to defend their access to their territory or their food, they do it by projecting power to physically constrain other animals. Nature's top survivors have been genetically optimized to do this. They evolve increasingly clever ways to project power and impose physical constraints, impose physically prohibitive costs on their other animals to secure their resources, to defend their freedom of action. And if you study humans in our society, you'll see that we behave the exact same way. We also use physical power to defend our resources and to secure our freedom of action in every domain. So for example, if we want to defend our access to the land, we develop technologies to project power in from through land, to physically constrain people or impose physically prohibitive costs on any belligerent actor who would try to deny our access to the land. And these same principles hold true for when civilization expands its footprint into other domains, like the sea or the air or space. It turns out that security works the same way in every domain. If you want to secure your resources in that domain, you must project power in and from and through it. And as a complex emergent benefit of all these societies competing against each other in this grand scale physical power competition, control over our resources remains decentralized. You'll note that no single person or polity has ever been able to gain or maintain unimpeachable centralized control over all of the land, all of the sea, all of our air, all of our space. For as long as human civilization has existed, we've been constantly engaged in this physical power competition to decentralize control over these resources. We even have a special name for this protocol. It's called warfare. So what happens when human civilization expands its footprint into this fifth domain of cyberspace? What happens when human civilization starts to value a new resource in this domain called data? How do we secure access to our data? How do we decentralize control over our data? How do we defend our freedom of action in this domain? Why wouldn't we expect to do it the same way we do it in every other domain? Why wouldn't we expect people to project power, physical power, to secure their cyber resources? Is cyberspace some kind of special exception to this very well-established trend in cybersecurity, or are we overlooking something? It seems to me like there's a missing piece of the puzzle. We use physical power to defend our resources in every domain except cyberspace. Why? For some inexplicable reason, when we try to secure our cyber resources like our data or our information or our software, we keep on trying to rely exclusively on encoded logic. So instead of trying to use physical power to physically constrain or impose physically prohibitive costs on cyber attackers, computer scientists keep on acting like there's some magical combination of if, then, and else statements that will keep us secure. And not surprisingly, it doesn't work very well. The third largest economy behind the United States and China is the black market digital economy of cybercrime. It turns out that if you want to keep your software secure against the systemic exploitation of its encoded logic using nothing but encoded logic, it's a demonstrably ineffective cybersecurity strategy. But recently, over the past 13 years, a new group of people have emerged and shown that it's possible to secure software without relying exclusively on encoded logic. They've shown us that it's possible to use physical power to secure our resources, to decentralize control over our resources. And they've done it the same way that we do it in every other domain, by physically constraining the bad guys, by imposing physically prohibitive costs on the bad guys, using this new technology they call proof of work. But how do you physically constrain bad guys in cyberspace? Isn't cyberspace some kind of non-physical domain? So how does that work? Answer to that question is actually really easy. All you have to do to physically constrain bad guys in cyberspace is physically constrain their computer. And to do that, you just really need to build a physically constrained computer and make them use it. So what do I mean by that? Let's start with the first general purpose.
That line right there. Build a physically constrained computer and make them use it. There's two parts there. You got to build the computer, then you've got to make them use it. Those are going to be, there's two separate considerations.
This computer built in the 1940s. Over the past 80 years, our computer engineers have been trying to shrink the size and energy consumption of our computers to make them physically easier to operate. As a result of this design practice, we now have microchips. But if you wanted to make a physically constrained computer, you would have to reverse optimize this design strategy. And you would have to march in the opposite direction. So instead of a microchip, you'd have to build a macrochip. How do you build a macrochip? Turns out the infrastructure that you would need to build the macrochip, that is, the circuitry that you would need to build the largest and most energy-intensive computer ever, is already in place in the form of our global electric power grid. The global electric power grid is huge, so big that no single nation can control it. The global electric power grid uses a lot of energy, so much so that no single nation can power it. But at the end of the day, the global electric power grid is a bunch of electricity passing across a bunch of wires. It's the same exact technology that's in our computers, except it's been reverse optimized. It's physically expensive to operate. So from a computer science perspective, it'd be really easy to convert the global electric power grid into a giant physically expensive to operate computer. All you would have to do is apply Boolean logic to the power, build some kind of converter to convert watts into bits of information that can pass across the internet. And guess what? That converter's already built. It's already been adopted. It's already scaled globally. That technology is called Bitcoin. Bitcoin converts our global electric power grid into a giant physically expensive computer and then uses it to secure data and messages passing across the internet. Bitcoin is special because it secures this data not by relying exclusively on encoded logic, but instead by tapping into the physical constraints of the power grid to physically constrain the bad guys trying to use it. Bitcoin also decentralizes control over this data by enabling people to compete in a global scale physical power competition for that control. Sound familiar? Bitcoin satisfies the same function as the other warfighting technologies that we use in these other domains, but it takes a different form that we haven't seen before. It's the same game, but in a different domain. So if you combine all these concepts together, we can see that Bitcoin could be the missing piece of this puzzle. Of all people, Bitcoiners have figured out how to project power in, from, and through cyberspace. Bitcoiners have figured out how to secure data, decentralize data, preserve freedom of action in cyberspace. That doesn't sound like just a monetary technology to me, folks. That sounds like a cyber warfighting technology, a cybersecurity technology, a cyber defense technology. Maybe nations will use it to do defense differently in the future. I think that we may be at the dawn of a new age of digital power projection as humanity expands its footprint into cyberspace. I think this technology is going to become critical, that nations are going to rely on it to secure their cyberspace, just like they rely on airplanes to secure their airspace. And I think most people in this room don't get it yet because they think it's just the coin. They think maybe, at best, that it's interesting technology, but of no military value whatsoever. Ironically, here's the ironic part about this. This has happened before. For hundreds of years, the Chinese alchemists who invented black powder thought it was just medicine. It took centuries for people to figure out that black powder was useful for way more than just medicine, that it would change the game of national security. They say that history doesn't repeat. They say that it echoes. I think history is echoing right now with this new technology that people think is just a coin. So if I'm right, if this really is a military-grade technology, then we're already in a space race. It's already a cyberspace race. And as JFK said, the exploration of this domain will go forward whether we participate in it or not. And no nation that expects to be the leader of other nations can expect to stay behind in this race. For this reason, I believe that becoming masters of this cyber power projection technology is, in fact, a U.S. national strategic imperative. I fear that by ignoring this technology or underestimating this technology, that we, the DoD, could be making a huge strategic blunder. And I used to think I was alone in this line of thinking. But then, after my National Defense Fellowship at MIT, after publishing a book on this subject, it became a #1 bestseller, top 10 global release. So maybe I'm not alone. And at the same time, I've noticed a dramatic shift in the attitude of our adversaries, a change we can't ignore. Over the last couple of years, China and Russia have done a complete 180 on this technology. They've gone from being super unsupportive of this technology to being super supportive of this technology. They're now the second and third largest players in this industry. I'm concerned that they may have figured this out before we have. I'm concerned that they realize that this is a defense technology, not a monetary technology. And if it's true that this is a defense technology, then that would imply that it's up to the Department of Defense to get us back on track, to lead the national conversation on this, not the Department of Treasury, and especially not the non-government Federal Reserve Bank, the people with the biggest financial conflicts of interest possible. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the DoD can't afford to fauch this up. I think we could probably agree that the future of national security is cybersecurity, and I just showed you a new approach to cybersecurity, where people have figured out how to tap into physical power, to physically constrain bad guys, to impose physically prohibitive costs on bad guys, all to secure their cyber resources the same exact way that we do it in every other domain. I just showed you this, yet people still don't see it, probably because they're extrapolating from the past, making that same rookie mistake that we've talked about multiple times today of expecting the next war to look like the last war, the next warfighting technology to look like the last warfighting technology. If that's true, then we're no different than the Chinese alchemists who didn't understand the strategic importance of black powder. We're no different than General Foch, who didn't understand the significance of airplanes. We have to start taking this technology seriously, not as a monetary technology, but as a cybersecurity technology, a defense technology. We have to start thinking critically about the national strategic implications of Bitcoin. Our nation is counting on us to recognize these trends and to posture this country to be a leader in these defense technologies when they emerge, to be the first, to be the best, before it's too late. And the clock is ticking. Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to be sure that I was completely understanding. I'm partway through his book. I've listened to a long series of him discuss this, but it was a few years ago. And so he wrote this book called SOFTWAR, like software without the E. He wrote it about 350 pages, laying out his entire thesis. And he published it. And then about a year or so ago, I don't remember the exact timeline on this. This has all happened within the last couple of years. He was ordered to stop selling it and to stop talking about it publicly. Military superiors ordered him to do so, which is very interesting. I don't have any inside information about all this, but just from kind of following this little community and seeing who's talking to whom and who's appearing with whom and who's referencing whom, I can kind of build out a bit of a shadow network here. And it seems very, very clear to me that the administration sees it the way he sees it. Or at least people within the administration see it the way he sees it. So I'm not just advocating for the position he's taking here. I do think that he's right. And we'll talk a little bit more about it here in just a second. I do think he's right. But like whether I think he's right or not, or whether you like what he's saying or not, I'm saying that I'm seeing lots of smoke indicating the administration has a similar perspective to him. He may even be like consulting directly with them. Again, I don't have any inside info about this. This is just me. This is just public info that I've seen, just kind of reading the tea leaves as I poke my way around the internet. So, I did as I usually do when I'm trying to parse an issue. I popped open Grok, and I said, based on Jason Lowry's software thesis, is it accurate to say he believes Bitcoin is a protocol for digitizing electricity to create an unhackable decentralized ledger, and that its use as a currency is strikingly just icing on the cake? This is the response. Yes, based on Jason Lowry's software thesis, it's accurate to interpret his view as framing Bitcoin as a protocol that effectively digitizes electricity through its proof-of-work mechanism to create an unhackable decentralized ledger, with its role as a currency being a secondary, though significant outcome akin to icing on the cake. Lowry's a U.S. Space Force officer and MIT graduate. He argues in SOFTWAR that Bitcoin's proof-of-work system transforms electrical energy into a form of digital security. By requiring miners to expend computational power, measured in watts, to solve cryptographic puzzles, Bitcoin ties physical energy to the integrity of its blockchain. This process makes the ledger extremely costly to attack. Any attempt to alter it would demand an impractical amount of energy, rendering it effectively unhackable. As long as the network remains decentralized, the majority of hash power is honest. This aligns with his broader power projection theory, where he sees Bitcoin as a tool for imposing physical constraints in cyberspace, not just a financial system. His thesis emphasizes Bitcoin's strategic significance beyond money. He posits that its primary value lies in this electro-cybersecurity function, securing data and projecting power in the digital realm by leveraging real-world energy costs. The decentralized nature of the ledger, maintained without essential authority, is key to this vision. While Bitcoin's use as a peer-to-peer currency, as originally outlined by Satoshi Nakamoto, is real and functional, Lowry suggests it's a byproduct of the deeper technological breakthrough, a secure, energy-backed system that can protect critical information in a digital age. The currency aspect, while groundbreaking, is thus framed as a compelling but not exhaustive application, hence the icing on the cake idea. This interpretation is consistent with how his work has been discussed. For instance, he has described Bitcoin as, quote, a new form of electro-cyber power projection technology that could secure precious bits of information beyond just financial data, suggesting a scope far broader than currency alone. His focus on national security implications like deterring cyber attacks or bolstering a U.S. hash force further underscores that he sees Bitcoin's monetary use as one layer atop a more fundamental infrastructure. Yeah, his thesis was pulled from public access in 2023. It is available on Audible. Someone did an audiobook reading of it that I'm partway through. And then additionally, there's a piece that he wrote here for the U.S. Defense Innovation Board that is like a summary of the book, basically. So this was dated December 2, 2023 from Major Jason Lowry. Subject: background paper on the national strategic importance of Bitcoin. To the esteemed members of the Defense Innovation Board, during my studies at the Department of the Air Force's Air Command and Staff College, we were introduced to the concept of an offset as a strategy that leverages technological advancements to counterbalance or negate an adversary's traditional military strengths or numerical superiority. This approach involves the innovative use of cutting-edge technologies to gain strategic and tactical advantages, often in unconventional ways. Simply put, an offset strategy seeks to tip the balance of power by introducing transformative capabilities that redefine the nature of power and the dynamics of conflict. I contend that reusable proof-of-work networks like Bitcoin represent an offset strategy for the 21st century. Although commonly associated with cryptocurrency, the Bitcoin protocol could alternatively be described as the most operationally successful implementation of what early engineers called a reusable proof-of-work protocol. Over the past 3 decades, computer scientists have been exploring multiple types of proof-of-work cybersecurity protocols. It just so happens to be the case that 14 years ago, a reusable proof-of-work cybersecurity protocol was developed and adopted for the initial purpose of securing financial information against systemic exploitation and abuse, thus earning the name Bitcoin. However, this name misleadingly implies that this reusable proof-of-work protocol is limited to protecting financial information rather than practically all forms of data, messages, or command signals. As a result, this misconception underplays the technology's broad strategic significance for cybersecurity and, consequently, national security. Understanding the importance of proof-of-work protocols requires a brief overview of cybersecurity. Recall that hacking fundamentally involves exploiting the inherent logic of computing and information systems. For over 8 decades, software engineers have strived to protect computing and information systems from hacking by developing increasingly sophisticated encoded logic to conceal their vulnerabilities. This technique is believed to be able to effectively safeguard a computing and information system's internal logic. However, this strategy has a critical flaw. No amount of encoded logic is impervious to the systemic exploitation of that same logic, regardless of its sophistication. In other words, it's impossible to fully secure computing and information systems against hacking by relying exclusively on software alone, because all software can be hacked. This vulnerability explains why cybersecurity continues to be a widespread issue no matter how sophisticated we make anti-hacking software. Recently, however, a wave of innovation has emerged in the field of cybersecurity as people explore alternative ways to secure computing and information systems, not just through encoded logic, but by developing unique countermeasures, which make the exploitation of known cyber vulnerabilities too physically costly to execute. This approach marks a significant shift from traditional methods, which rely on encoding sophisticated logical barriers to hide system vulnerabilities from hackers. Instead, it introduces the concept of leveraging brute physical power as the primary source of protection for computing and information systems, signifying a subtle but very noteworthy change in cybersecurity strategy. The early academic community exploring this novel cybersecurity concept, most of whom did not come from a military background nor appear to have had any experience in physical security, arbitrarily decided to name it proof of work. But it must be emphasized that the concept of proof of work represents nothing more than computer scientists discovering how to deter and prohibit malicious actions in cyberspace by rendering those actions too physically costly to carry out. From a systems thinking perspective, the academic community essentially rediscovered the same core function of military deterrence, but taking a different form. When you fight a war, the entire premise of fighting the war is that you're going to make it too physically costly for your opponent to carry out their approach. Proof of work mirrors the physical security and deterrence strategies utilized in other domains like land, sea, air, and space, where imposing steep physical costs on adversaries is the primary means of protection. It's effectively the same game, but in the fifth domain. The key difference lies in the nature of the work or physical power used. Unlike the kinetic, lethal, or hard power projection typically seen in military contexts to protect spatial or mass-based resources like territory or physical assets, proof of work utilizes electrical power. This approach safeguards non-spatial or massless resources, such as data, messages, control signals, or digital property, representing a non-lethal or soft form of physical power projection that people and polities alike can now utilize to their advantage. This concept is thoroughly explored in my graduate thesis from MIT titled SOFTWAR, a novel theory on power projection and the national strategic implications of Bitcoin. But how exactly is it possible to impose physical costs in the physically intangible realm of cyberspace? Surprisingly, deterring malicious activity in this non-physical domain through physical means is indeed possible. The strategy involves using a physically resource-intensive computer. By designing a computer that is physically costly to operate and making its use mandatory, we can effectively introduce physical constraints into cyberspace and then impose them on anyone operating in, from, and through cyberspace. This could be achieved by building and integrating such a computer into the internet infrastructure, thus transposing real-world physical restrictions into a previously unrestricted digital realm for miscellaneous cybersecurity applications. I'm going to give you a whole list of various different commercial. In the episode yesterday, someone said that there's no commercial applications for Bitcoin like as a technology, and I'll read a whole list of them here as soon as I finish reading this. This significant yet subtle change in the internet's underlying integrated architecture would occur at its foundational level, at the base layer state mechanism. This level of the internet is often overlooked by most people, especially software developers and computer scientists, intentionally abstracted from general view because of its enormous complexity, making it an area ripe for disruptive innovation. Few people pay attention to the base layer mechanical configuration at the bottom of the internet tech stack, yet it is here that impactful changes can be implemented, like introducing physical resource-intensive computers, which transpose real-world physical constraints into the digital domain. This idea leads to some fascinating questions. How could one design a computer that is intentionally expensive to operate, and what would its features be? This concept is counterintuitive, contradicting a decades-long trend in computer engineering aimed at reducing size and energy use, as seen in microchips, photonics, and quantum computing. To develop a high-cost operational computer, we would need to reverse this trend, creating a system that is intentionally large and resource-intensive. This approach would involve shifting away from the efficiency of microchips to the concept of a macrochip, an extraordinarily large, resource-heavy computing device with enormous operational costs. This concept challenges the prevailing belief in computer science that smaller, more efficient computers are inherently superior. However, a review of academic literature shows that few computer scientists have paused to question this assumption or explore the potential benefits of deliberately designing a large, resource-intensive general-purpose computer. This is uncharted territory. The intriguing next step is to figure out how to construct the so-called macrochip. Interestingly, the infrastructure needed for such a creation already exists in the form of the global electric power grid. The global electric power grid is so vast and expansive that it transcends national boundaries, requiring immense amount of electrical power that no single country can provide or manage independently. But the global electric power grid is little more than a network of wires injected with various states of electrical charge. In other words, it's fundamentally the same type of technology as the circuitry in conventional computers, but on a much larger scale and with significantly greater consumption of physical resources. When viewed from space, the global electric power grid even looks like a computer circuit board, indicating its potential as a foundation for building a macrochip. From a computer science perspective, converting the global electric power grid into a massive-scale, energy-intensive, general-purpose computer, or macrochip, is quite plausible. The key is to simply find a way to digitize the grid's electricity. This process would involve developing a system that converts the grid's differing states of power consumption into bits of information that can be transmitted across the internet. So you're converting watts into bits. How can you do something where you get a direct translation of wattage into bittage with an immutable ledger, an immutable record of every transaction that has occurred within that ledger? It sounds complicated, but astoundingly, this isn't even a theoretical concept. This technology has already been developed, and it's already scaling across the world faster than the internet did. We call it Bitcoin. The world's first operational macrochip may be hiding in plain sight, largely unnoticed, because most people who are not well versed in computer science, cybersecurity, nor the potential benefits of creating an extraordinarily resource-intensive computing mechanism perceive it to be little more than an inefficient monetary database. Just like how for centuries Chinese alchemists viewed black powder as little more than fire medicine to cauterize wounds, we too are currently limited in our understanding of this new technology, seeing it only within the context of its first intended use case. This oversight may prevent us from recognizing it and leveraging the full strategic scope of Bitcoin's impact, much like China's early underestimation of black powder. Our limited view of Bitcoin as just a monetary system may be causing us to underestimate its potential to fundamentally transform the base layer architecture of the internet, with profound downstream implications on cybersecurity. Integrating these insights, I argue that Bitcoin is not merely a cryptocurrency, but the beginning of a cybersecurity revolution. It converts the global electric power grid into a large, physically costly computer or macrochip, and uses it to physically constrain malicious actors and safeguard a wide range of data and messages traversing the internet, which can include but is not limited to financial information. Bitcoin symbolizes a collective global effort to create a robust physical defense mechanism in cyberspace, using the same time-tested strategy that humanity has used to protect its interests in every other domain for thousands of years, by developing novel technologies to physically overpower adversaries. Bitcoin's electrical power projection capacity surpasses that of any potential malicious entity, including entire nation-states. It also dwarfs the combined power output of all other proof-of-work networks. In our study of the ethics of emerging military technologies at Air Command and Staff College, we examined how the advent of computer technology and networked systems has brought warfare into the realm of cyberspace. This shift calls for a critical reassessment of war's fundamental nature and how traditional military theories apply to modern cyber conflicts. And acknowledging the need to update our understanding of warfare to encompass cyber elements, I propose a close examination of proof-of-work technologies is also equally as necessary. Proof-of-work technologies, as exemplified by Bitcoin, have the potential to significantly reshape our understanding of warfare in the cyber domain. At the very least, these innovations are already transforming our understanding of cybersecurity. Considering their proven impact, it's advisable for the Department of Defense to begin formally investigating the cybersecurity applications of these technologies. Integration of this technology could revolutionize national defense strategies in cyberspace and lead to a major shift in how to handle cyber conflicts. In summary, I argue that Bitcoin represents not just a financial innovation, but a paradigm change in cybersecurity, aligning perfectly with the concept of a strategic offset. This shift in power dynamics is not driven by the technology's financial uses, but by its role in empowering people during the dawn of the information age to use physical power to protect vital information. I contend that we are arriving at a pivotal moment in the long history of human power projection, with the potential to transform the global balance of power if we don't recognize this offset and adapt to it quickly. I strongly recommend that the Defense Innovation Board advise the Office of the Secretary of Defense to prioritize the investigation of the national strategic importance of proof-of-work protocols like Bitcoin. If the observations in this letter are accurate, the DoD might have already lost valuable time and opportunities by not fully appreciating this technology's potential beyond its original classification as electronic cash. It's crucial now to recognize this oversight and respond with urgency. Doing so is key to understanding and effectively utilizing this technology for national defense and cybersecurity strategies. Addressing this could be vital for the U.S. to maintain its position as a global superpower and leader among nations, especially in an increasingly digital and interconnected world plagued by cybersecurity vulnerabilities. This proactive approach could ensure the U.S. stays at the forefront of technological advancements in defense and security. Jason P. Lowry, Major, United States Space Force. And that is that. So I have more evidence of this sort of thing being taken seriously among military leadership. But before I get to that, let us take a look at this. So I just asked Grok, what are some of the most outside-the-box practical commercial implications of Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining as a technology? So here are some. Energy grid stabilization via mining flexibility. This already exists. It's prominent in Texas. Bitcoin mining's high energy demand can be turned into an asset for power grids. Miners can act as demand response players, ramping down operations during peak electricity usage, like heat waves, and ramping up during surplus generation, e.g. when wind or solar overproduce. This balances the grid while miners profit from cheap excess energy. Companies could build business models around deploying mobile mining units to regions with stranded renewable energy, like remote hydroelectric dams or flare gas sites, turning wasted resources into revenue. This is already happening all over the place. 2. Decentralized heat generation for agriculture. Mining rigs generate significant heat, which is often seen as a byproduct to dissipate. Creative firms are exploring ways to repurpose this heat commercially. Think heating greenhouses in cold climates to grow crops year-round, or warming fish farms for aquaculture. A Bitcoin mining operation could double as a sustainable agriculture hub, offsetting energy costs with food production profits. Number 3, tokenized real-world assets with mining rewards. Imagine a platform where Bitcoin mining rewards are used to fund and fractionalize ownership of physical assets, like real estate, art, or rare commodities. Miners could earn Bitcoin that's automatically converted into tokens representing shares in a property or a gold reserve, creating a hybrid investment model. This bridges crypto and traditional markets in a way that's both practical and accessible. Micropayment-driven content ecosystems. Bitcoin's Lightning Network enables near-instant low-cost transactions. Content creators, like musicians, writers, or video makers, could embed micropayments into their work, charging tiny fractions of a cent per view, listen, or read. Mining operations could power these platforms by securing the network and processing transactions while taking a cut of the revenue. It's a radical rethink of how digital content is monetized, bypassing ad-heavy models. Like just as an example, with something like this, the average view count on a video for me here is about 1,500-ish, 1,200 to 1,500, depending on the video. So imagine if each one that you watched cost you 10 cents. Let's just say 10 cents. And I get 1,200 views. I would make $120 per video. And that it would cost you 10 cents. I get $120 per video. Scale that up, and you suddenly have a way to very easily monetize an audience and to be able to support a creator without having to go through all the rigmarole of like super chats, and money gets taken by Google and all these other different things. Waste to wealth mining operations. Bitcoin mining could incentivize cleaning up environmental messes. Companies might set up rigs powered by methane captured from landfills or agricultural waste, profiting from both mining and carbon credits. This turns a pollution problem into a dual revenue stream, aligning financial gain with ecological benefit. What you'll notice is many of these things here is Bitcoin mining plugging into inefficiencies in various different systems and capturing the excess energy that is otherwise just kind of being dissipated. So it makes us much more energy efficient, and that energy is being directly monetized right away in the creation of this immutable digital ledger. Crowdsourced computing power markets. Beyond securing the blockchain, mining hardware's computational power could be rented out during downtime for other tasks, like rendering CGI for films, running AI simulations, or crunching scientific data. A commercial ecosystem could emerge where miners double as decentralized cloud providers, flipping the script on centralized giants like AWS. Bitcoin as a corporate treasury hedge. While firms like MicroStrategy, now known as Strategy, already hold Bitcoin as a reserve asset, a more unconventional twist is companies running their own mining operations to generate Bitcoin organically. This sidesteps market volatility risks of buying Bitcoin outright and leverages excess corporate energy, e.g. from on-site solar, to build a self-sustaining treasury. Gamified mining for consumer engagement. Brands could integrate Bitcoin mining into loyalty programs or games. Think a mobile app where users mine tiny amounts of Bitcoin by engaging with a company's products or services. The actual mining happens on centralized rigs, but rewards are distributed as micro-earnings, blending marketing with crypto adoption. So ask for more. Mining-powered disaster recovery networks. Deploy mobile Bitcoin mining units with satellite connectivity to disaster zones, using excess energy from portable generators to fund rebuilding efforts via BTC earnings. The mined Bitcoin could be instantly converted to local aid funds, creating a self-sustaining relief model. Bitcoin-backed microgrids for remote communities. Set up a small-scale mining operation in off-grid areas using solar or wind to power rigs. Profits of mining could subsidize electricity for local residents, while excess BTC builds a community wealth fund. Decentralized insurance pools. Use Bitcoin mining revenue to seed insurance funds on the blockchain. Policyholders pay premiums in BTC, and miners secure the network while earning a share of the pool's growth. Mining is a space industry driver. Develop Bitcoin mining rigs for space habitats or lunar bases powered by solar arrays. The mined BTC could fund space exploration costs. Dynamic pricing for public transit. Integrate Bitcoin micropayments into transit systems where fares adjust in real time based on demand, powered by mining-backed infrastructure. Riders pay tiny BTC amounts via Lightning, and miners process transactions while earning fares as revenue. Crypto-driven recycling incentives. Companies could reward customers with mined Bitcoin fractions for recycling electronics or plastics. Mining rigs powered by waste-to-energy plants process the rewards, creating a circular economy where trash literally turns into treasure. Bitcoin mining is a carbon sink. Pair mining with direct air capture tech to suck CO2 from the atmosphere. The energy-intensive process of mining offsets its own emissions by funding carbon removal, marketed as net negative Bitcoin, a green branding play. Peer-to-peer energy trading. Mining-funded universal basic income. Bitcoin is a supply chain auditor, using mining-powered Bitcoin to track goods, e.g. coffee beans or rare metals, with tamper-proof records. Miners earn BTC by validating supply chain data while businesses gain transparency. Interactive mining museums. BTC-powered smart city infrastructure, mining-driven medical research, Bitcoin-backed microloans for entrepreneurs, mining as a digital art patron, autonomous vehicle mining fleets, Bitcoin mining time capsules, mining-powered virtual reality worlds, BTC as a water rights marketplace, mining-enabled refugee support. Okay, we're getting a little gay toward the end here. But you see the point here. So the idea with this is that more and more people, as they begin to catch on to these different applications, even if it starts with just the initial core few, just from a commercial perspective, the more the network begins to grow, the more people want to be a part of the network, and the more they want to find interesting ways that they can plug in to like siphon off this excess energy that's not being used. Like, hey, you have, well, I don't remember the numbers, but there's extraordinary amounts, something like 30% of energy production just gets pushed off into the atmosphere. The other thing that this does now is that the more people want to do this, the more energy is required. So now it creates an extra incentive for building out energy infrastructure. And then it maximizes the efficiency of that energy infrastructure as it's being built out. And it begins compounding on itself. All of this aside, though, even if all of this is still whatever, you don't buy it, I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you don't buy it. This is what's coming. Let me catch up on some of the comments here, and then this is an absolutely mind-blowing thing that happened today. Man, you guys have been popping in here. Okay. Josh Ham says, reminder, based upon current projections, American electricity generation needs to at least 5x due to AI and data storage businesses currently building and expanding. And that's what this is. This is creating a it's creating a gravity well that's going to start sucking in investment. As people are going to start, because it creates a virtuous cycle. As you begin investing it and building out the infrastructure for it, it expands the capacity and the utility and the stability as the network grows. And so more people begin investing in it. And so because we want to improve the capacity and the strength of the network and the security of the network, and we want to control that, we now have extra reason why we need to invest in our own energy infrastructure. So it's not only directly monetizing energy, but it's also going to drive the cost of energy way down at the same time. Because of it realigns the incentives and it creates a race after this. This is what he means by it becoming like you fight the war over who's gonna control more of the Bitcoin network. Obviously, and I don't think there's some people that say, "Oh, this is going to eliminate the like physical war." No, it's not. It's going to change the profile of it, but it's going to like the invention of the airplane didn't eliminate war, but it changed the characteristics of it. So this guy here, I've never seen him before. I just stumbled across this today. He's apparently a well-known options trader named Josh Mandel, and I saw a whole bunch of hullabaloo about this, and I'm like, what's going on with all this? So this tweet here is from November 5. So 9 p.m. Central Time, November 5. He says, I hope that I have established a little credibility with a few of you so that this will help. This time is different. The fourth turning is upon us. Thursday, 11/7, 1/16/25, 3/14/25. And he has a little, like, poem here. It says, when 84 becomes the base, Bitcoin calls will melt their face. This is how you get ahead by IBIT calls in size instead. 10-1, you'll ride it up. The stock it soars into the skies. Then sell the call and exercise. See the path of Pistol Pete, try a slug and then repeat. Look every day at close and lows when 84 is on the dot. The car will launch a real hole shot. Feel the G's, hear the roar. The coin won't stop, 360 more. A trio of fours times a grand, that's the top. The BTC fades, this is how a cowboy trades. A nation state down by the sea, I think I'd call it empathy. No room for hate or jealousy. Essentials, they would be on me. Work if you want, but just for fun. Think in the shade, play in the sun. No idea what this means, except for he's saying 314.25 that the price of Bitcoin is going to be $84,000 on 314.25, which is today. He made this call November 5. So this was the first tweet that I saw this morning from Jeff Walton, good guy to follow, at Punter Jeff. He says, calling 84K Bitcoin on 314 back on 11/5, 129 days ago, is incredibly improbable. Pretty sure Josh Mandel's either from the future or the man behind the curtain running the show. So this was earlier this morning, at 10 a.m. this morning. Bitcoin was at 84,359.47. So all of Bitcoin Twitter was spazzing out. I'm sitting here just kind of like peeking over, watching them. And they were like, if the end of market, if Bitcoin is at 84,000, 84,000 anything at the end of market, like that would be insane. To make a call like that is beyond improbable. The Bitcoin close on Robinhood was 83,997.65. Josh has called 84,000 at close on November 5, 2024, 129 days ago. He was within 0.0027% of the actual close 129 days out. And there's a number of other people that he was within a couple of dollars north or south of it, and a couple of people had, when they showed it, theirs was like 84,001 cents. I don't know what this means. It's just completely bonkers. For what it's worth, he said that this is a very bullish indicator, and he has some of these traders guys are very odd. But for what it's worth, he's saying this is very bullish, and he's made some other specific calls. We'll see if those actually happen. So some of the comments here. Fenris Unbound says, I suppose from a certain point of view, Bitcoin will lead to global warming and the further progression of civilization. Yeah, that's true. Rob P says, this leads to an arms race for energy and compute power. Better than weapons, but you will still need weapons to protect the assets created after the work is done. Right. Correct. Josh Ham says, AKA for the Grugs, the password to access some file or something would be a proof of work that the user can marshal X amount of computing power, which requires X amount of electrical power. Right. So a hack is like, if you're hacking something, you're trying to access the thing without doing the work required to get it. You're trying to find some sort of shortcut. So proof of work is proof that if you have the thing, you did the thing necessary to get the thing. You could spend the rest of your life trying to understand the actual encryption and the way the whole process works and everything. I've studied it, and I've memorized all the steps and talked with people about it and listened to stuff about it, and it just takes one day of not thinking about it, and all the specific details are completely unrecoverable for me. Josh Ham says, what if the network was able to capture the processing power of the audience? Like watching Matt's video stream in a special window that uses the rest of the power to mine BTC for the streamer. There's all sorts of things. It opens up an entirely new world of innovation. This is, I think, one of the biggest takeaways from this is it's not sure, but go buy Bitcoin. This is not financial advice, but if I had money to buy Bitcoin, I would be buying Bitcoin right now. But that's only secondary. It's just we have this technology that also happens to be an investment, and down the road could also be used as a currency. But those things are secondary to the fact that it's an entirely new platform for crazy different types of innovation. This is a very good place now for any of our guys who are remotely inclined to start capitalizing on those sorts of opportunities. And in theory, literally every person could have a Bitcoin mining rig in their house and just be mining constantly. And that now you have a distributed computer that is distributed across every single household in the country. So it becomes unfathomably difficult. It would require more, it would cost more in resources to try to hack it than you would actually get for hacking it. We're talking like trillions of computers worth of capacity. Josh says, this BTC economy sounds disastrous. Where's the usury? Okay. Rob says, I'm BTC optimistic, but it will naturally fall it will eventually fall into the natural order of hierarchy. It will not be decentralized as it matures. I'm curious to see how that plays out. Josh says, I agree, kind of. BTC will be decentralized in theory, but BTC is connected to electricity. So a country with large enough energy production can have enough decentralized centers to control it. Yes and no. Like, it's going to force innovation in, like, once people start catching the fever, then it's going to drive a tremendous amount of investment into coming up with ways to generate energy. Because we need to try to generate as much energy as possible so that we can mine as much of it as possible, so that we can get as much of it as possible and control as much of this asset as we possibly can. And the economic incentive develops to the point where you also want to try to decentralize as much of that as possible, because it's actually in the incentive of, this is the thing, is like with this network, once you begin participating in the network, it incentivizes everyone who's participating in the network to perpetuate the network and to do the things necessary to protect and stabilize and secure the network further, which is a virtuous loop. That's part of the brilliance of how it was designed. So this is a story from, it was announced a couple of weeks ago, but it's relevant here. I'm going to tie this in. This was from February 22, 2025. Trump fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and his nominee is a very interesting fellow. This is a tweet here from Ben Coleman. He says, my first civilian job between the military and B school was with an airline startup. The co-founder and my boss was a guy named Dan Caine. He took a bet on a dude who cold emailed him. Lieutenant General Dan Caine is now the nominee to be chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. This is an inspired pick and signals a new way forward for DoD uniform personnel selection. The golden path to military promotion is positively disrupted. A tested private sector entrepreneur may lead our military with deep implications. Transmuting gold. A nominee like this was simply not possible 10 years ago when I worked for civilian Dan. It was unthinkable for a reservist, much less an entrepreneur, to ascend to the highest military role in America. His military qualifications are distinctive. He's an exceptional and combat-tested warrior. He was an early career officer when scrambled to intercept a civilian airliner in an F-16 on 9/11 over the skies of D.C. Early career officer scrambled to intercept a civilian airliner in an F-16 on 9/11 over the skies of D.C. Yeah, Josh. Josh is the one who messaged this to me. He probably messaged me the day of, and I've been sitting on it ever since then. After a civilian career, more about this later, he went back and was a spec ops leader against ISIS. You don't go from being an Airedale to winning the trust of ground guys without having something serious and special about you. 4-star founder mode. Lots of folks will focus on his Air Guard background as unusual, but his civilian time is the true differentiator. Lieutenant General Kane spent 9 years in the trenches as an entrepreneur and business leader. No CJCS has ever had that background. Dan raised capital and built for-profit businesses from the ground up. He's tried new business models, made investment decisions, wrestled through their challenges, and was personally accountable for the consequences of success or failure. More on the types of business models he was involved in, coming soon. Living with the consequences of your leadership decisions is somewhat novel for flag officers who take the prescribed golden path for career progression. That high-agency, accountability-oriented mindset is likely what got him previously promoted amidst peers who didn't live the entrepreneurial crucible. A leader with an unusual talent stack will better identify and promote others who break the mold, creating strategic advantage in a chaotic world. He will have a broadened toolkit other flag officers lack. Finally, as private sector innovation collides with military reality at an accelerating pace, someone who has excelled in both arenas is a boon for American military leadership. Dan set the standard as a boss, a sage mentor with high outcome-based expectations. To be honest, I haven't found the equivalent level of excellence across other civilian orgs I've worked for. The nation will hopefully experience what I lived a decade ago. Personnel is policy. It starts at the top. This is how we win. Now, this thread here, this person is not a fan. In tonight's military purge, Trump named as chair of the Joint Chiefs Dan Caine, a retired lieutenant general so underqualified he'd need a waiver. Oddly, Caine was installed last month at 3 VC firms doing crypto, AI, and defense tech, including Thrive, founded by Jared Kushner's brother. And you guys have been listening long enough now. I don't even need to say his name. One of the initial major seed investors in Thrive, you know who it was. So in January of 2025, he became venture partner at Ribbit Capital, an early investor in Bitcoin, Coinbase, and Robinhood markets, and an early proponent of cryptocurrencies. He is also a venture partner at Shield Capital, a Silicon Valley VC firm founded in 2022 by Philip Bilden. Trump's nominee for the Secretary of Navy in 2017 withdrew. They invest in defense tech and AI. And then Thrive Capital, founded by Jared Kushner's brother Joshua in 2010, investment by Peter Thiel in 2011, led a funding round for OpenAI in 2024. Yes, Mr. Thiel. And then a couple of tweets here crying about them not disclosing his investments or whatever, and how it's so bad that he's purging people, and there's conflicts of interest, and yada, yada, yada. And oh my God, they fired him. And they didn't go into enough detail about his firms that he's a part of. So is our CJCS nominee Dan Caine really a crypto bro? Musk doesn't let you see all of anyone's Twitter follows anymore, but even so, it's clear Caine follows a lot of crypto accounts: Coinbase, Binance, Bitcoin Magazine, CoinDesk, and various crypto founders and traders. There's a whole list of them here. Caine also follows a slew of political figures. There's nothing wrong with a retired lieutenant general dabbling in crypto, following politics, and accepting lucrative advisory positions. It's just not a good look for a CJCS. They don't give a shit. Now, the whole Jason Lowry thing I just played for you, talking about this administration's focus on Bitcoin. They specifically carved Bitcoin off as separate from the rest of crypto. So everyone talks cryptocurrency, but the official position of the U.S. government now is that Bitcoin and crypto are different things. And Bitcoin is getting its own special reserve, and they're going to be focusing on acquiring it, unlike all of the rest of them. And then Trump makes this unique move of appointing, as chairman of the Joint Chiefs, a guy who's been involved in VC for Bitcoin-related and defense and AI tech. One of the companies is all intertwined with Anduril. One of those was started by a former Palantir guy. This is the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs. These are the sorts of little threads that leave me with no choice but to believe that Luke Groman is correct, that Bitcoin is a technology that was either initially conceived of or taken up by American military intelligence interests. Here's a story about Dan Caine, told by our president himself. You guys are going to have to put up with the audio and video being completely out of sync here. I couldn't get him to line up, or it's not lined up, and I couldn't find one that has him lined up. But you can hear the story.
I like to sit with pilots. I respect people that know what they're doing, and these are the best in the world. I really do. These are the best in the world. And the pilot says, "Sir, we're landing in approximately 1.5 minutes." I say, "But there's no runway." "No, sir, the runway's right up there, sir." I say, "I don't see it. I have pretty good vision." At least for my age, I have good vision. I guess for my age, I have great vision, but I don't have vision like a 35-year-old captain. He said, "No, it's right up there." I said, "I'm sorry, Captain. How about this? Should we lift off and try to get Captain? There's no runway." Anyway, no, he said right up there. And we land. There's practically no lights. These are little pin spots. And I said, think of this. We spent $7 trillion in the Middle East, and we can't land a plane with the lights on. 20 years later, how bad is that? Now, seriously, how bad is it? How bad is it? $7 trillion, and we have to fly in with no lights. But I met some incredible people. I met some incredible people, generals. One of them came from Syria, the operation in Syria. And I was upset with my generals because they weren't getting it finished. I want the job done. I want to bring our people back home. It's not fair. And this is why I flew. So I met generals I didn't know. General 1, General 2, General 3. I mean, these generals, there's no person in Hollywood that could play the role. These guys are like perfect people. I said, what's your name? Sir, my name is Razin. What the hell kind of a name? I said, Razin, like the fruit? He goes, yes, sir, Razin. What's your last name? Caine, Razin Caine. I said, you gotta be kidding. It's true. Razin Caine, I just made him a big star. Just like I did with Mattis when I said, we're gonna give you a new nickname, because Chaos is not a good nickname. So we changed his name, called him Mad Dog, but it wasn't working too well. Mad Dog wasn't working too well. So what happened is I flew to Iraq. I wanted to meet the people on the site because I learn more sometimes from soldiers, what's going on, than I do from generals. I do. I hate to say it. And I tell that to the generals all the time. But I didn't have to go there. I didn't have to go there because I meet. And I landed this airport, the most incredible thing. We must have spent $3 billion building it. It's one of the reasons I don't want to leave Iraq so fast. I said, well, how do we leave this thing? So I have Razin Caine, 3 other generals, colonels, sergeants, and I said, bring the cameras, I'm going to make a movie. This is the most incredible thing. And I said to the generals, listen, we got to get out. I want to know, why is it going to take 2 years to knock off 2 or 3 or 4%, which is what we had left? It won't, sir. I said, tell me why it won't. It won't, sir. If we attack them in a different manner, we can do it much faster. Okay, General Razin Caine, how fast can... Sir, we can have it totally finished in 1 week. I said, 1 week? I was told 2 years. 1 week. That's right, sir. We're only hitting them from a temporary base in Syria. But if you gave us permission, we could hit them from the back, from the side, from all over, from the base that you're right on right now, sir. They won't know what the hell hit them. They won't know what the hell hit them, sir. And I said, why didn't my other generals tell me that? Why didn't they tell me that? I said, did you tell them that? Not our place to say it, sir. They come in from Washington, sir. We have to take orders. You're the first one to ask us our opinion. True. It's true. 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 So I went back and I said, I'm going to get back to you soon. Razin, I think you're great. I like you, Razin Caine. But I did say, I said, well, hey, listen, we're in Iraq. Isn't that very far away from... I was here in a very short time, sir. I flew right in. Of course, he's taking a plane that goes 2,000 miles an hour, you know. But incredible. What you learn from being on the site. My father was a builder. He always used to say, nobody ever got rich by sitting behind their desk. It's true. It's true. He'd say, you got to be on this site. You got to be with the contractors. You got to see if they're ripping you off. You got to collect every nail that's dropped. Every piece of wood, you can sell it. You got to be on the site. You got to see while they're building, while they're under construction, is that wall straight or if it's crooked? And you have to fix it before they build it, not after they build it when you rip everything down.
You know, he definitely has gotten older over the last 6 years. This was from 2019 at CPAC. And he definitely doesn't get this, I don't know, energized. He's much calmer now. But man, that's like the perfect clip to illustrate why every single military guy I know just absolutely would die for the man. So Dan Caine was the guy who was responsible for the thing that Trump has since raved about, that they were able to wipe out ISIS so quickly. So he made quite an impression. I just want to highlight something back here real quick from Spud Ruckus. It says, imagine being Germany and other European countries right now having shut down your nuclear plant. Yes. So here's the thing. So you have the whole premise that if you've listened to Stormy, Tom Luongo, Luke Grumman, any of these guys, Pete, Jason, me, if you've listened to us talking about this old world European aristocrat, or not even, I can't even call them aristocrats, bureaucrats. The creation of the Eurodollar system and the way that they've leveraged it against the United States, the way they've been intentionally fomenting this debt crisis. They had their whole World Economic Forum plan rolled out. And one thing that both I've heard both Stormy and Tom Luongo mention is that Europe is this is one thing that always bothered me. People call Europe a continent. I'm like, it's not a continent, it's a peninsula with some like assorted islands around it. But Europe is the one region of the world, one developed region of the world that does not have the necessary hydrocarbons to sustain themselves. They're going to rely on importing it from somewhere else. So they've conceived of this scheme where they're going to use the dollar to leverage the United States into defending all of their interests all over the world, and then hyper leverage everyone to the point where they create a sovereign debt collapse and step in with their CBDC, which is going to be using carbon credits, where they're basically monetizing forests. So instead of having a Bitcoin reserve or a gold reserve, you're going to have a forests reserve. This is why all of the billionaires are buying up all the forests that they can get, because that was going to become the basis for the new currency. And then it was the American military and banking establishment that was like, all right, no, we're done with this. We're not signing up for this. We're not ceding over our sovereignty to a bunch of European eggheads and mobsters and organized criminals. So then it would stand to reason, what we're talking about now is a thing that can be used as money, but is really it's an asset that creates the capacity for directly monetizing energy, creating a direct relationship between energy expenditure and monetization, and serves as ultimately as Jason Lowry is describing, like a cyber force field. Doesn't that fit that story just remarkably well? The U.S. dollar reserve system was not going to last forever. It's been apparent for a very long time that it's now being leveraged against the United States. So if I'm an American with sovereign interests in the United States, I need to come up with a way to port to a new system that I have some sort of controlling stake in, that can have a cooperative relationship with the US dollar without directly undermining its value, and can function as this neutral reserve asset. That it's like gold when you're talking about it in terms of like a medium of exchange. It's like gold, but it has much better money features than gold does. So it's like, do you want your currency, do you want your primary reserve asset to be forests? Or do you want your primary reserve asset to be a massive computer? Once I started looking at this as military technology, developed for the explicit purpose of navigating away from the dollar reserve system without compromising American sovereignty, that's when it really started to click. And now we've got the US and Russia and China looking more and more like they're willing to be much more cooperative together, and they're all individually identifying Europe as the source of all the problems. They're willing to have a cooperative peer relationship with each other. And they also all happen to be openly now pro-Bitcoin and have large stakes in it. But Europe doesn't. Who's going to get left out in the cold? And we've got a Bitcoin guy, a guy who's been in AI, crypto, and defense VC world, who's now the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And he's also got this in his background. While at the CIA, interesting, in 2023, General Caine offered a reflection about his time as the chief of weapons and tactics attached to the 121st Fighter Squadron at Andrews Air Force Base in Washington's Maryland suburbs on September 11, 2001. After the terrorist attacks, fighter jets were deployed over Washington for the first time. Quote, "We jumped in the airplanes and started them up," General Caine recalled in a reflection on September 11th posted by the CIA. "As my plane came to life, the generators came online and the radios were going ballistic. People on the emergency channels were saying anybody around Washington, D.C. will be shot down. I remembered thinking to myself, wait, that's me that will be shooting. The weapons were loaded on my airplane, so we'd have the 20-millimeter gun and 2 heat-seeking missiles," he continued. "I was airborne for about 7.5 to 8 hours that day." Then it recounts the story that I just played you guys from Trump. It says, Trump also added a new detail claiming that General Caine donned a MAGA hat despite military guidelines that active duty troops should not wear political paraphernalia. "I love you, sir. I think you're great, sir. I'll kill for you, sir," Mr. Trump said, General Caine said. Then he puts on a "Make America Great Again" hat, Mr. Trump said, laughing. "You're not allowed to do that, but they did it." And then there was one more thing I wanted to read, just talking about his background. It's from the Daily Caller. "President Donald Trump's new nominee for the highest military officer in the land earned his stars through a long storied career, ascending the rank and file all the way to being one of Trump's top allies. Retired Air Force Lieutenant General Dan Razin Caine is set to replace Air Force General Charles Q. Brown as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, pending confirmation by the Senate. Service members who trained, taught, and fought alongside him throughout his career told the Daily Caller News Foundation that he is qualified for the role in character and in capabilities. James Riemann, former pilot for the 149th Lone Star Gunfighters, joined Caine on a mission to an undisclosed location during the early days of Operation Iraqi Freedom, with the objective to destroy Scud missile sites. Caine was an instrumental part in the mission's success, as the pilots were relatively inexperienced with the novel configuration used for the mission and the F-16's limitations as a jet. Quote, "That was a pretty complex mission for the F-16, partially because of our speeds. We were getting used to new targeting pods, night vision goggles, all this kind of stuff. And although most of us were proficient F-16 pilots, very few guys have the discipline to be the resident expert. And it became evident Razin was the smartest guy in the room," Riemann told the DCNF. "He could hang out on the pro level, very relatable, very friendly, but like when he spoke, he was our subject matter expert on power. Scud was a mission that none of us had really flown." Caine began his military career after training at the Air National Guard, flying in the 138th Fighter Squadron out of Syracuse Air Force Base from 94 to 98. He then transferred to Andrews Air Force Base in the Washington, D.C. area. Quote, "He always kept striving for more and striving for perfection," retired Colonel Gary Atkin, Caine's former flight instructor at Tucson, Arizona, told the DCNF. "There's guys that sit around the squadron and drink beer, and then there's other guys that keep trying to do more stuff, you know? So that was Dan. He was working on the test center out in Tucson, going to fighter weapons school. He was always kind of looking for all of these other things." After 2 deployments to Iraq in 2001 and 2003, he joined Tucson Air Force Base in Arizona before returning to D.C. to serve as policy director for counterterrorism and strategy under former President George W. Bush. During Trump's first term, Caine served as the commanding general of U.S. CENTCOM, Special Operations Component in Iraq. Trump said in his announcement on Truth Social that Caine was a warfighter that was, quote, "instrumental in the complete annihilation of the ISIS caliphate." Same story. ISIS was all but wiped out in Syria and the wider Middle East due to Trump and Caine's efforts. After his stint at CENTCOM, he took brief stints as director of the Special Access Program's Central Office in 2019. This is a guy who knows where bodies are buried. the special access programs, and special assistant to the chief of the National Guard Bureau in September of 2021. In December that year, he became the associate director for military affairs at the CIA, his last posting before retiring in December of 2024. Brown was removed in part due to his endorsement of DEI in the military, which was a point of controversy in his confirmation hearings under former President Joe Biden. Similarly, Trump held strong animus for former General Mark Milley, who was critical of Trump while pushing Biden's progressive policies in the military despite being Trump's appointment. Milley earned his ire. During his long and storied career, Caine impressed top brass and the rank and file alike. Quote, I think he's put himself in a really good position from operational fighter pilot, worked his way through the ranks, lots of jobs, special access, CIA. He's really provided himself with some broad perspective to be an effective leader, Brennan told the DCNF. Bill Bostic, also a former F-16 pilot in the Lone Star Gunfighters, echoed Caine's professionalism and drive. We were all just hell-bent, hell-raising fighter pilots, and he was just into it like we all were. We're all trying to be number one. During his time at Andrews, he was quick to develop relationships with Special Forces operatives, a former senior defense official told the DCNF. Quote, well, I think the story of how raising himself on his own initiative got himself immersed into the SOF community and into the special ops is unusual, a former senior defense official told the DCNF. I mean, as an F-16 pilot, Razin took it upon himself to go down there and talk to them and really get himself trusted and immersed into the SOF community. That's a very rare story. Caine ascended to his current status through the Air National Guard, which the official said was an unconventional path for his role. He certainly got a different kind of background and a different kind of perspective, the official told the DCNF. His resume is much different than most people that have ever had that job. So all the military guys that I follow that I'm aware of, they all were very, very happy with the appointment. So, yeah, Josh says special access program equals spook adjacent. Yes. Andrew here says, wouldn't it be crazy if America joined the BRICS? Well, I noticed that when Putin gave his statement responding to the ceasefire, he listed off a number of countries that they thanked, and the countries he listed were the United States, China, Brazil, India, or no, I don't remember if Brazil, China, India, South Africa, and maybe Brazil. But he basically listed BRICS plus the United States. And the thought also occurred to me that when Trump made the statement about what's happening to farmers, to white farmers in South Africa, and he's expedited the immigration opportunities for them coming seeking refuge, that's a BRICS nation. So this is actually a diplomatic overture to BRICS. So yeah, I think the United States joining BRICS is almost a foregone conclusion. I don't even know if they would still call it BRICS, but yeah, it would be very interesting. Okay, let me see if there's any other comments here. Yeah, Trump would choose BRICS. World War III is Trump's greatest fear. He'll do a lot to negate that outcome. Yes. All right, well, I got 2 remaining quick stories here. Quick little bits. Both very got some orthodox content for you guys to round it off. Appreciate you guys hanging out this late. 11:30. It's almost midnight. Latest I've ever gone. So this is Father Paul Trubenbach in he's in Salt Lake City. And very valuable observation here. And I wish I had learned this when I was growing up as a Seventh-day Adventist. I wish I had learned this perspective back then because it's been very useful ever since I did. And yeah, Father Paul Trubenbach is a very good egg. So this is for the specific subject matter here is for all my guys out there who struggle with this issue, but then it can also be extrapolated out to any of the other passions as well.
The devil really doesn't care so much about making men fall into lust, and that may be kind of a surprising statement to a lot of people, but if you fall into lust, there's always repentance. Christ gave us the gift of repentance, and so we can live out our repentance more fully. The demon knows that. So the demons, what they really want is not to make men fall into lust, but to fall into despair, and that's the shame that we want to conquer. They want to make us fall into despair so that we stop seeking Christ altogether. We really want to avoid that. We need to understand that Christ could take lust away from a man like that. But the reason he doesn't is the same as with all the passions, is because the struggle is our salvation. In actually learning to properly battle against lust, men will learn the spiritual life. They'll learn how to pray in a way that they never would have otherwise. They're going to learn to become better, more fulfilled men because of this struggle. We will never succeed in this fight against lust if men fight against lust and against the demon of lust. In doing so, all you do is get into a conversation with him, and guess what? He's much smarter, much more experienced than you in the fight. He's going to make you fall. What you have to do is want something more than you want lust. You have to fight for Christ. You have to fight for the spiritual life. You have to find the things that you're fighting for more than you're fighting against lust. You'll have victory in this eventually, and I've seen men conquer this.
Despair. Despair is the greatest sin. Because despair is really pride. When you're despairing, the implicit assumption there is, how dare this happen to me? How could this be happening to me? I can't believe it's so bad. I deserve so much better than this. I expected so much better than this. And now I'm despairing because I'm not getting it. Despair is just like the other side of the coin from pride. This is why. No fucking blackpilling. Don't do it. Don't do it. The demons are out there. They're skating around. It's Lent. So they're extra motivated right now. And I've been seeing it. I watch. I listen to you guys. I'm tracking everyone, following the conversations, and I can see people are having a tough time. And I'm seeing the conversations people are trying to drag other people into. It's crazy our standard for what's happening. Like there's crazy things that are happening constantly all the time. But after we got like a mind-blowing headline 5 times a day for a few weeks. Now, getting 2 mind-blowing headlines a day as everyone just sort of adapted to the new normal. So they're going out and they're looking for stuff to fight about, looking for stuff to doom about. The doom fappers are prowling about. Don't let them get you. Shout out to Mr. Jason Miranchuk. You got to go follow him. Miranchuk now. This is exactly it. No blackpilling, but in divine. This is a quote from St. Paisios. If you ask a fly, are there flowers nearby? It will answer, I don't know, but down there in that hole there are some cans, garbage, filth, and it will list all the dirt it has been to. But if you ask a bee, have you perhaps seen any dirt around here? It will reply, dirt? No, I haven't noticed any dirt. This place is full of fragrant flowers. And it will list all the garden and wildflowers it has found. You see, the fly knows only where the garbage is, while the bee knows that over there is a lily and further away a hyacinth. This is how I understand things. Some people are like bees and others are like flies. Those who resemble flies seek out something bad in every situation and occupy themselves with it. They see nothing good anywhere. Those who resemble bees find goodness in everything. A corrupted person thinks corrupted thoughts. They interpret everything negatively and see things the wrong way. But a person with good thoughts, no matter what they see or hear, will always have a good perspective. Pray for us, St. Paisios. Well, that's all I got. A super chat. $20 super chat from CyberChud 2077. Another week of W streams. Well, thank you, my friend. I appreciate the support. We're at 80 likes. Don't think we're going to get to 100 today, but I knew when I went live that the viewership was going to be down. But you guys still, I expected it to be down more than it was today. It's held pretty steady in the 90s. Appreciate you guys sticking it out here late into the night. I'm not going to get to a morning stream. I'm not going to go for another 23 minutes. I'm going to go get in bed. So thank you guys for another great week. Thank you for all the stimulating conversation in the live chat and for supporting the show. Appreciate the monetary support and the engagement support and telling people about the show. I love all you guys, and I enjoy coming up here every day and doing this with you. So I hope you have a great weekend. Make sure you hit the like button on your way out. Follow me on Twitter at RealKingPilled. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Go join the Kingpill Discord, kingpill.com. And remember, for members who are in the chat, you've got a new HH emoji. The HH emote is in there. You can use that now as I give you Hulk.
When they took a shot at my hero and they tried to kill the next president of the United States, enough was enough. And I said, let Trump-a-mania run wild, brother. Let Trump-a-mania rule again. Let Trump-a-mania